What's up, guys? Welcome to Lawsplaining the Interwebs. I am your host, Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota. And today I have with me Alison Tieman?
It's Tieman.
Tieman. Alison Tieman, otherwise known as Typhon Blue, a men's rights activist and a Canadian. I don't know why the Canadian matters. But she has recently, I guess, completed the first leg of what looks to be a marathon lawsuit up in Canada, as she was excluded from the Calgary Comics Expo. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was banned for 10 years from the Calgary Comics Expo and all the expos that they run, which at the time were all of the expos in Western Canada.
But just
and I live in Western Canada.
Just
well, actually,
all
not
of them,
all
though.
of the yeah, but all of the expos in my region were reasonably accessible to me.
Okay, I'm getting requests to make things a little louder, and I'm going to try and do this on the fly. So just
Okay, all right.
second.
I think I might be able to help too. No, wait,
Okay.
I think the gain is already up as far as it'll go. Is it me that's quiet or
My volume? That's my fault. Let me fix that.
Oh, okay, I got you. So I'm good.
Okay, is that better, guys? Hopefully that's a little bit louder. Okay. We'll go with it. We'll go with it. I'll also just start yelling and screaming. We're going to do an Alex Jones stream.
Okay.
All right, we're going to have it, folks. Here we go. We're going to talk to Alison Tieman. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. We're going to get started on your story in just a second. I do want to say that, guys, I have a quick announcement to make. And you get to be here for this, so that's a little weird, but that's okay. I am actually announcing now that content will be coming quite at an increased pace in the very near future, because I am actually scaling back my law practice significantly to focus on storytelling and educating about the law through YouTube and other mediums. So there's going to be a lot more content coming through this channel. There will be more regularly scheduled live streams than just every Friday. And the Rekieta Law Institute will be kicking into gear, and there will be, the law classes that'll be actual law classes will be taking place, and that schedule will be coming together and announced very soon for Patreon supporters. I didn't get fired. I'm the boss. So that's that. So there's my announcement, folks. So stay tuned, and lots more stuff coming, lots more conversations coming as things progress. But enough about me. I am here to talk about and with Alison, who you're a bit of a controversial figure, I'm learning today. But I don't want to focus too much on the controversial aspect of it. I don't know much about the drama other than what I've kind of seen. And I mean, people are going to take positions on different things, and that's fine. But for our conversation, I want to start off with talking about your lawsuit, because that's what my channel talks about, is this lawsuit thing. And I do have a quick super chat from Nicholas Melchiori, who says he's calling the police, presumably because the stream didn't start on time. And as we all know, you should contact the police before contacting your lawyer, according to comic book professionals who are the best law experts on the planet. So anyway, so Alison, walk me through kind of what happened. I read the documents you sent me about your case. You've got an appeal coming up. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
That's if we get the funding, we will be going for the appeal. Well, okay. to just give a brief overview, I pointed out the hypocrisy of feminists on a panel, and not in a mean way, but just in a measured way. And the feminists slapped me down. And then
they're good at
the
doing
convention
that.
slapped me down. The convention facilitated that by evicting me, and then the media slapped me down by broadcasting a bunch of lies about why I was evicted. And now the Canadian civil courts have slapped me down for daring to say, hey, I have rights. You shouldn't have done that. So that's the brief overview, but we can get into the minutia if you like. If that well, that's why I'm here. So let's do it.
Right.
The whole thing started. I am an independent comic creator, so an indie comic, and for the longest time, I've been interested in independent comics. It started with ElfQuest, and from ElfQuest, I've made a very interesting, I wouldn't say lateral shift, but maybe into a different dimension to Dave Sims' Cerebus series, and then a whole bunch of other stuff, independent stuff mostly. I haven't really been a big follower of Marvel or DC, but just independent comics.
Sure.
And for a while, I was playing with trying to do my own comic, and then I started to work on this comic that I call Xenospora. And in 2014, I started to sell. I got some money together. I created my first volume of Xenospora, and I went to one of Calgary Comics and Entertainment Expo's expo that they have in one of the cities closest to me, Saskatoon. And I had this volume. I had a friend help me sell. It went really well. It was actually a really good experience. That the Saskatoon Expo was really fun, and I sold a lot. And I also signed up for the Calgary Expo, which was the next year. And I went to the Calgary Expo. In the meantime, I had signed up for the Winnipeg Expo, but the Winnipeg Expo was significantly larger than the Saskatoon Expo by about 20,000, 30,000 people. And I found when I went to the Winnipeg Expo, because I have social anxiety, that it was just too much for me to maintain that kind of level of availability over their 12-hour shifts. So coming off of the Winnipeg Expo and having experienced panic attacks and not being able to deal with that many people, I realized that I was going to have to do something different for the Calgary Expo, because the Calgary Expo was 2.5 times larger than the Winnipeg Expo.
Right.
So everything that happened in Winnipeg was going to be times 2.5. So realizing that, I started to talk about maybe bringing other people from Honey Badger Brigade, which is my podcast dealing with geek, gamer, and men's issues. So I talked to them, and they were open to coming. So we put on a fundraiser. And the idea was we were going to put on a great booth. We're going to have Honey Badger merchandise related to nerd culture. Gamergate was happening at the time, so we were promoting this to Gamergate, and they were like, "Yeah, cool. We can help a woman who's struggling get into comics and be able to manage her booth. You know, that sounds like something we want to support." So a bunch of Gamergaters helped us out. Because we were going to be, you know, in public. We're going to be talking to people, not necessarily talking to people about the politics, but just being there, talking about our interests. And everything went great. We got our fundraiser funded. Everybody was ready to go. I had made this incredible installation because I'm also an installation artist. So I had a booth ready, backdrop, space funnel, merchandise, and I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be awesome. This is gonna be the best.
Yeah, and
so we go there.
One second. So this was not a cheap booth either, right? It
wasn't a cheap booth.
It was like $9,000 or something that was raised to help build this thing up and make like a presentable thing. That's what's in the documents, right? Like roughly $9,000, something like that.
Yeah, 9,000. Well, okay. The booth itself, I'd have to look. There's so many numbers that I'm keeping track of that I have to sort of pull out on the top of my head. The booth itself, I think, was more like 6,000, which, sure, you know, it was a modular booth. I don't think it was quite. It was a modular booth, so I expected to go to conventions with that booth for years.
Gotcha.
So it was in it. I had designed it so that I could take parts out, put parts in, and manage any kind of booth configuration. I had actually signed up for the next Saskatoon Expo by the time I got to the Calgary Expo. and I had already planned out how I was going to use the booth in the Saskatoon Expo. So I can't give you an exact figure, but it's about that.
That's fine. That's fine. I just wanted to point out that your booth isn't like a table with a drape over it.
No, it wasn't a table with a drape over it. And it wasn't just the backdrop and the funnel. There was also a merchandise display that we had, Honey Badger merchandise and stuff related to geek and gaming culture at that time. We had like a Vivian poster.
Sure.
And because Gamergate helped me out, and I really appreciated it, I put their logo on one of our banners. Like, not the big backdrop banner, but a banner that a sort of a flag banner that we had created for that.
Right.
And yeah, it was the booth. There's another way to sort of describe how elaborate it was. It took about 3 to 4 hours to set up the booth.
Sure.
Between the backdrop, the space funnel, the merchandise displays, and everything. So I was really stoked. It was going to be awesome. The first day we do the setup. The second day we're all in this booth. We're having fun. Brian's drawing. He's doing his convention sketches, commission sketches. Everybody else is hanging out. Anna Cherry is going around in this like cute little badger cosplay kind of outfit. It was really adorable. She's a cosplayer.
Sure.
And a member of our group. And everyone's looking at it was just really cool. It was really fun. Just having fun looking at everybody else's booths.
Right.
And doing our thing.
So let's get to, you had an interaction at a panel where
yes.
you brought up, if I remember right, you had, it was a panel talking about comics or something, and you brought up basically feminist representation in comic, or feminist misrepresenting men in comics alongside with misrepresenting women, representing men as only stoic, emotionless, and strong, and women as only weak damsels or something like that. Is that right, or am I missing? I might be butchering that.
Yeah, you're right. So after this, it was a half day. The first day that we were there was a half day. And me and Sage Gerard, who's actually went to the Saskatoon Expo with me to help with sales. He was also at this expo. We decided we wanted to attend the Women into Comics panel, which wasn't explicitly labeled a feminist panel. Because this was patron funded, I had put up, like, I had a video camera in the booth so that we could capture stuff that happens. And we'd been recording stuff that was going on. So we had a recording and we took it to the Women into Comics panel just in case something interesting happened, and we would present it in like a compilation for the patrons who had supported us getting there. And we go to the Women into Comics panel, sit down, no problem. The comics panelists come on and they start talking about how they're victims of the culture, and what was really interesting is at the time in 2015, 2014, there was this article going around about fake geek gamer girls and how gamer girls and girl geeks were being persecuted by geek and gaming culture. And it had this sort of list of things that happened to them. And what I noticed is that every woman on that panel was basically almost like using that as their recipe sheet for some, and I guess if it's a situation where but it just felt really artificial. Like they were just go on there to say, yeah, this happened to me. And the things that they were talking about were like, have you, a man goes up to them in a comic book store and starts asking them what they're into. And it's like, is that really being victimized?
Right.
I mean, he may just be trying to open up a conversation with you. And if they say, oh, I like this, he starts to grill them on it. And I'm like, that sounds like a conversation with a guy who's socially awkward, who just wants to, try to connect with you over a shared interest. That doesn't sound like he's trying to persecute you or thinks that you're fake.
Yeah, kind of
But
sounds
anyway,
like it kind of sounds like he's treating them like he would treat a male in a comic shop. Like, what are you
yeah,
into? And then checking their credibility on whatever nerd subject it is. And I use nerd not pejoratively, but notice a giant bit of Warhammer books behind me, so I'm with it. But yeah, check their knowledge. See if you see if they're just kind of going in, if they're kind of making things up or what. You want to see if you guys if anybody's got connections, if you can connect on what you are passionate about. So
yeah, and there's nothing, even if it was a test of, I'm not even sure if I would go so far as say it's a test of credibility, as much as awkward people have an awkward way of trying to figure out what you're into and what they can connect with you about in those interests. And I'm like, as somebody who's also socially awkward, I think that they were making themselves out to be victims of things that weren't necessarily really that much about them, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
It was more about the person just trying to make a connection in an awkward way. So I'm like listening to this and I'm like, this sounds like this article. And also each one of them would be like, oh yeah, that happens to me, when someone else would describe something, but they wouldn't describe anything. And so we listened to this for like 15 minutes and it was getting frankly boring. And then they started talking about wanting to have a conversation with the other side, wanting to have a conversation. So they started out saying, let's have a conversation. Why can't we have a conversation? And my ears perk up and I'm like, okay. And then one of them says, why do these men's rights activists why do they not want women in geek and gamer culture? I'm like, wow, I didn't realize that. I don't think I've ever heard that from any one of us. And so I stood up and I said, would you like me to answer that? And they were like nodding and they said, yeah, go ahead. And I said, because I'm a men's rights activist. The reason why I don't like to see feminists in this culture is because you emphasize this idea that women are victims of this culture. And that not only does that, exclude men from being considered when they're victims of something, but it also sort of emphasizes the idea that women are defined by being victims. And we had a back and forth. It was very civil. That's what's so bizarre about it. It was incredibly civil. And then I sat down. Other audience members sort of jumped up and were like, I want to have my say. And they started talking and my friend got to have his say. And then we had this discussion. It was a lot more interesting than the first 15 minutes, I'll tell you that. And then it was over. And me and Sage left. We ended up talking to a librarian afterwards for about an hour. But we left. Oh, I just realized something. We talked to that librarian for an hour, and I remember one of the panelists poking her head out and I got this really strange look from her. And I'm like, wow, that was weird. And then she popped her head back. And I actually, now that I think about it with the timeline, she probably had already been starting to plan this whole what came next
right
at that point. Sorry, it just occurred to me because I remember that stuck in my mind, but I couldn't figure out why she had given me that strange look until I remembered that I had actually talked with the librarian for quite some time, which would have given them time to plan all of this in the room that I was outside of. It's actually a little creepy. Anyway, so we thought it was great. We thought we had a great discussion with them. And we left and we were like, oh, wow, that was awesome. We had a conversation. That's so cool. And we went back to the booth and we packed up because it was basically the end of the day. And we went back to my dad's place. We were staying in the basement, very, very, very upscale. And we did a wrap-up stream for the patrons to tell them what we had been up to that day, for the people who supported us in our audience. And in the middle of that stream, we received a tweet from the editor, or I received notice of a tweet from the editor of the Mary Sue, Sam Meggs. Oh, one other thing. Hannah, who is one of my podcast co-hosts, during all this, there was one sour note. She overheard what she believed to be one of the staff members and another person she couldn't identify saying, we need to shut some of these booths down and gesture towards ours. So there may have been some stirrings even before we went to this panel.
Sure.
That something's going to happen.
So
But
let's fast forward a bit. So you had this discussion, and then there were some tweets that came out. Apparently, Mags, whoever Mags is from the Mary Sue, started writing up this article. Another person from the Mary Sue, whose name eludes me, but I'm not really super interested in giving them much credit. They tweeted it out. They had something like 13,500 followers, and they got approximately 20 complaints or something. They went to the Calgary Expo, I guess, leadership or whatever, told them that you guys were affiliated with Gamergate, you were causing trouble at the panel, and they shut you down, right? Like that's what ends up happening. They summarily just cut things short. And what's kind of important for this whole thing is that you guys had, prior to coming to the expo, you'd filled out an online contract where basically it's like a click accept. These are kind of known as contracts of adhesion. You click accept, you have to agree to whatever terms are on there. You don't get a chance to negotiate or line things out or counter propose something. You just get what they give you. And in the US, contracts of adhesion are presumptively legal unless they're unconscionable, but they're kind of disfavored in court. They're read against the party drafting them. As I understand, in Canada, it's even a little stronger. You have some specific consumer protections regarding these types of contracts, which make it so that if a company has a provision in the contract that says something like, we get the final say on what this contract says, the court's like, no, it's not how it works. There's got to be protection for people going into this. So that's kind of the basis for your lawsuit. Is you guys had a booth set up at the Calgary Expo. You accepted the terms, and upon acceptance of those terms, you guys created a binding contract. By the Calgary Expo kicking you out, they had laid out a list of procedures in that contract that they were supposed to follow. Something along the lines of, if there was a complaint made, they would do a full investigation. They would involve you, get your side of the story, stuff like that. None of that ever happened. You guys were just told, you need to get out of here. And I think the guy said, you got to get out in 10 minutes, right? Like something.
Yes.
Just a dramatic.
10 or 15 minutes.
Sure.
Yeah, it was. And according to Hannah, she actually requested tools and he denied them. Tools to help us get the booth down. Oh, sure. This individual, this man is something else. Like, I'm not kidding you. This is
a guy at the expo.
Yeah, this is a guy at this was the operations manager at the expo. Yeah, and the funny thing is that he would deny us stuff that we would need to comply with his orders. And at some point, because we were directly across from the customer service, we just went to them and we're like, we can't do this if you don't actually help us a little bit.
Right.
Like, there's no way we can get this stuff out the door if you don't help us. And I guess they took pity on us, or at least they wanted to get rid of us. So they allowed us to move our car to the back where we could actually access it. And then they gave us something we could put our stuff on so we could bring it to our car. I mean,
Gotcha.
this is what we were dealing with at the time. The operations manager said, nope, we're not giving you any tools. And they wouldn't even give us a damn pallet to put our stuff on to actually take it to a car. Right. We had the security laughing at us during it too, which was, apparently I learned later there were other people who were watching the whole thing and laughing at it, which it actually really disturbed me to find out, because it was humiliating. It was humiliating to have to pull down my booth in the middle of a convention. It was humiliating to have to leave. I mean, it's hard to describe, like a mark of shame, and you didn't really do anything to earn it.
Right. So, some people might suggest that your association with Gamergate should have kind of prepared you for something like this. And I mean, personally, you know, I don't think that way. You probably don't know a ton about me, but I'm like so ridiculously free speech that it's dumb. Uh, I think that people should be able to associate with whoever they want all the time. I don't care if it's like super communist person who thinks that men should be in chains. I'd actually talk to that person and try and figure out what the hell's wrong with them. but you know, so like I don't have a problem with free association, but some people might suggest that because you're bringing the Gamergate tag on your booth, you maybe should have expected something like this. Like, was that something you had considered when putting the game? I mean, I know they had kind of helped you put things together, so you wanted to give them a little bit of credit. Was that something that you had considered, or had you not really?
Let me put it this way. I knew that standing up for my beliefs would increase the likelihood that I got blowback. But at the same time, I felt like I didn't necessarily want to succeed in a climate or a world in which I couldn't do that, in which free speech wasn't respected.
Right.
And the other thing is that in terms of, I should have expected it because I talked to Gamergaters, I supported the stated aims of Gamergate, which was bringing ethics in journalism, that I should just accept what happened to me as my due. That is, first of all, when each day at court, we walked under a sign that said, you have the right to be wrong, not do wrong. At the very worst, you could say, even if everything everybody said was right about Gamergate, that's not what I supported. I supported what I believed about Gamergate. And maybe in this, let's say, completely alternative reality where Gamergate really was those horrible things, that's not what I supported. I supported what I believed about Gamergate. I could have been wrong about Gamergate. You get that? I could possibly have been wrong about Gamergate in that alternative universe and still not be deserving of this kind of treatment because I have the right to be wrong.
Right.
Not to do wrong.
And we're probably in the same boat on Gamergate. Like I fully support the idea that there should be an ethical responsibility in gaming journalism as there is in, well, as there's supposed to be in other forms of journalism, right? If you're involved in various ways with people that you're writing reviews on, that should be disclosed. That's, you know, if someone sent me a bottle of whiskey and I was going to review it, then I would say, you know, by the way, so-and-so sent me this bottle of whiskey. It's delicious, but I'd probably say it's delicious anyway, because I just like whiskey. Yeah. So with Gamergate, I fully support the message of ethics in journalism, because you've got people buying stuff based on reviews. And I think it's, to tangent just a little bit, I think it's hilarious how if you open a video game review magazine, you can't find a score lower than an 8.5. And then you find out, of course, all these guys get to play early builds that other people don't get to play. They might get some special equipment sent to them to help them play the game, you know, at the optimized settings or whatever. And you start to, you know, notice that, oh, of course, their meal ticket involves getting access to these games so that they can get the articles out. And of course, you know, there's some compromise going on there. And most people don't care that there is a compromise. They just want it disclosed, right? Like, tell me that they sent you a brand new Alienware with the maximum specs. You can buy a $4,000 machine as a trial that you get to keep, you know, along with your video game review. I don't care that you got it. Great job for you, but just tell me about it, please. So yeah, I'm with you. You can be wrong. Don't do wrong. I don't think I don't think you necessarily are wrong about Gamergate. I think there's any grassroots movement is going to have this sort of chaos to it, right? Like there's no top-down structure of Gamergate. There's no top-down structure. Interestingly, there's kind of a top-down structure forming in Comicsgate, but generally speaking, these grassroots movements that come from a bottom-up sort of perspective, you're going to have radical elements. You're going to have people doing things in the name of the movement that don't necessarily have the endorsement of other people in the movement, and that's just a product of it. So yeah, I think the main problem you are facing is that you are facing the bared teeth of feminism, unhinged, where it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter what you believe about Gamergate. It doesn't matter what you believe. They have a label that they have to defeat, and feminism, as we've seen it in recent years, has just built into this cancer on society that is about undercutting the values that we all have been adhering to for the past 100 years. And the values I'm talking about are not like traditional gender roles and all that stuff. I'm talking about the values of free speech, the values of free association, the values to disagree, and to value that disagreement and to exchange ideas with people. So I mean, in essence, it looks like that's what you came up against. And in a culture that's ready to just bow down to that, there's not much you can do.
No. Well, you can fight back. Right. You can try to fight back. And at the very least, if you fight back, you reveal just how deep the corruption goes. And just how far it goes. So
on that note, let's talk about your court case. So you mentioned going into court every day. So this all happened back at the 2015 Calgary Expo, if I'm right. So it's been a while, but it took a while to get your case together. Obviously.
Well, no, actually, it didn't take us a while to get our case together. What happened was the expo had a number of very similarly named corporations, and they restricted my access to the contract that I signed with them because it was online. So they immediately booted me off their website, so I couldn't access the contract. So I didn't know the name of the entity that I had signed the contract with, because they used a trade name on most of the materials.
And real quick, just if people don't know, when you're drafting a lawsuit, and I'm guessing it's the same in Canada as it is in the United States, you don't get to sue the trade name of the lawsuit. So you don't get to sue, I'm trying to think of a good example, but, you don't get to sue Disney. You have to sue the parent company, Disney Incorporated, or whatever it may be. You don't sue Pixar, you sue Disney Pixar Incorporated, that sort of thing. You have to actually find the legal entity that you're suing, you can't just sue the Calgary Expo, which would be the trade name. You'd have to sue whatever corporation owns and operates the Calgary Expo, even if it's like Calgary Expo Limited Liability Company or something like that. So,
yeah, you have to find the specific. You know what? I'm gonna just close this fucking chat. They're awful. You have to find the specific. You have to find the specific company that it's the same in Canada, and they don't have to help you. Right. Which is astounding. And what's interesting is that my invoice with them was for a company called Calgary Comics and Entertainment Committee, which was an incorporated company despite ending with the word committee. So one of the names that we tried was that, and it was on my invoice. And I believe that was the name that we went into the pretrial hearing, because we have to all parties in a civil court have to come together and try to make a settlement before they go to trial.
Right.
That was the name on our lawsuit when we went to the pretrial hearing. At the pretrial hearing, the lawyer for the Calgary Expo said, "Oh no, that's not our name. Our name is the Alberta Comics Expo Entertainment Extravaganza." And so we put that on our freaking our freaking document. We send it in, and then he contacts us after that. And he contacts the judge and us after that, and he says, oh, I wasn't informed of my client's name during the pre-trial conference. Actually, their name is the Calgary Comics and Entertainment Expo, Inc. And it's like, why didn't you give us that when we asked for it 6 months ago? So that lawyer was doing all kinds of shell games and paperwork shuffling things to try to slow the lawsuit down as much as possible. And it was what they call lawfare. Of course, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Right. Yeah.
Using the system to try to delay and delay and delay and delay. And this I don't know if you've ever heard of this. The first time we amended the lawsuit to get their name correct, they actually played, I think it was circus music, and then the Beatles For the Money blaring on the line with a judge in the courtroom. Like, because it was a teleconference. So they called me, they called them, they played music so loud that the judge and I couldn't hear each other talk. And I didn't know what the heck was going on. She didn't know what the heck was going on. The motion for amending the case was dismissed. And then an hour later, she calls me up and says, oh, yeah, you did file your paperwork correctly. Here, it's not dismissed. It passes.
Right.
Have you ever heard of that from a defendant?
No. No, like, but it's an interesting strategy that it's now going in my back pocket. No.
Yes, now going in. Yeah, I'm going to pull this one out sometime in the future.
It depends.
I just depends on who you're fighting, eh? I was just mind boggled by that. It was just like, who are these people? They're insane. And the antics of that side, that's not even the least of it. That's not even the least of their crazy antics. I don't know if you want to get into all of that, but it was just, it's been an eye opener what the law, what the legal system is really like for me. It's right. Painful, it's boring, and it's punctuated by horrible terror.
And it's expensive. No, let's see. I don't want to dwell too long on the lawsuit. I want to touch a couple points, and then I want to talk about I kind of want to talk about where you go next after that. But so the lawsuit, let's clarify this for the legal explanation. This is about a breach of contract. Like, at essence, that's what it is against the Calgary Comics Expo. And then you basically have a defamation claim against the Mary Sue, right?
Well, it's not. Injurious falsehood is, it has several parts. Someone has to have maliciously create a falsehood, communicate it to a third party, which results in a loss of income. So, sure. Yeah, that's what injurious falsehood is. It's the most important parts are, of course, the malicious and communicating to a third party, but malicious falsehood. But it's not specifically defamation or one of those kinds of torts. So, sorry to interrupt.
No. That's fine. Canada law is certainly not anywhere near my specialty.
I believe the U.S. has something similar, but it might. It's also a fairly obscure. It's a fairly obscure cause of action, I believe.
Right.
It's not as common today as it were.
I think the types of stuff that we would have, something similar would be actually. You mentioned Mark Wade earlier, or you mentioned it to me in private chat. I can't really remember, but he's sort of a gem. He's kind of what has brought me into this whole comics thing. I don't know if you're familiar with what happened to a guy called Diversity in Comics involving Mark Wade, but he started an Indiegogo for a book called Jawbreakers Lost Souls, and then Mark Wade ended up calling the publisher for that book, and that was going to publish a run of the book after the Indiegogo had been fulfilled. That would go through sort of traditional distribution channels, and that publisher, let them be named, was Antarctic Press. And then Mark Wade makes a phone call to Antarctic Press, says some things informs them of some things about diversity in comics, and then suddenly Antarctic Press pulls the contract and says no deal for it. And the legal explanation of that is something called tortious interference with a contract. And the elements in the United States, well, it's state specific, but they're basically the same state to state. Is that you know that there's a contract, you contact someone with the intent to interfere with a legal contract. That contract does in fact interfere with the legal contract, and then the interference causes a monetary damage. Typically, that interference would have to be something that is either untrue or not otherwise a part of like traditional business practices. So that sounds kind of like what's happened to you. A similar cause of action is this like tortious interference with a contract or business relationship. So that's like your claim against the Mary Sue. But recently, the judge has ruled in favor of the other parties. And now I'm unclear on this. Has the judge ordered you to pay their attorney's fees, or are they pushing for their attorney's fees at this point?
They're currently pushing for their attorney's fee. And I don't know if I've said this publicly. When you look at what they're actually pushing for, it's absurd on its face. They have invoices for their attorneys, and then one of the individuals representing the Mary Sue as a client was also an attorney, and he's requesting 200 hours of his time, even though he didn't actually represent the Mary Sue in his capacity as a lawyer, and he didn't actually put forward any documents or do any appreciable work, and he has no accounting for his time. So he just flat out drops, oh, you owe me 200 hours of my time, 5 weeks of my time at $250 an hour with no indication of what he did with it. So that's $50,000 right there of the an American, of the 84,000 American the Mary Sue is asking for. And
Right.
It's like, if the judge actually awards them these costs, it will be evidence that he has it out for us.
Right. So the total costs they're seeking is something like $174,000, right? Like
Canadian, yes.
Okay, so that's like $18.50 in US money. No, that's a joke. That's a joke. No, but this is a huge amount of money. This isn't like a small potatoes case or anything like that. So when did you receive the ruling against you? That was pretty recent.
We received it August 1st.
Okay.
But we didn't want to do too much public with it until we actually had the physical copy of it, because it basically up to that point, when he did the ruling, it was a teleconference, so it was a verbal ruling, and you're not allowed to record it or do anything like that.
Right.
So we didn't want to publicize it too much until we had a physical copy to make sure we knew exactly what was in it, because up to that point, it was just our verbal, our mental recall of what had happened, which could be flawed. So, but there's something very interesting about the verdict itself. In Canada, according to a friend of mine who works for the Canadian government, and he got this from his law professor. So in Canada, judgments are supposed to be made public within 30 days.
Right.
It's now 38 days after the judgment, and it hasn't been made public. We had to actually purchase the judgment to have access to the transcript. That's not supposed to happen. It's supposed to go up on a website called the CanLII website, where it's made available to the public, because justice is supposed to be transparent, but it's not there. Where is it? This is really unusual for them to not want to not have this be public.
Yeah, and believe it or not, I've actually run into this in weird ways. At least in my practice, we have timeline rules that judges have to rule on something within X amount of days or whatever. And the funny thing is that when a judge takes like 35 days as opposed to 30 days, because that's kind of a common time frame. In the areas that I practice, a judge has 30 days once we have a motion hearing to kind of review all the documents, do his own research. But if they take 35 days, there's not like a remedy for that. It's just too bad. Too bad for you. Judge took too long. And that's too bad. Now, if that somehow prejudices you, which in the United States, or in my line of practice, I've never run into it where it actually causes a problem for my clients other than just being annoying. But with your case, it's a little weird because this is a final judgment on the merits, apparently. And so you've got 38 days for it to be, it's not public. And I'm assuming that you have an appeal window, like a time limit to file your appeal. Probably
for our appeal, we just have to prove, well, we actually didn't, I don't even think we had to prove that we were getting the transcripts. We just set in our appeal within the 30-day time limit. And so that's all done. It didn't really impede the appeal as far as I know.
Well, that's good.
So, okay. So that's done. Should be set. It's fine. What it's weird about it is, like I said, there are on that Canley website, there are now judgments from September 1st, but not ours. And it's supposed to go out within 3 months. It hasn't impeded anything on our end, but there's no reason why it's not up, especially since we've already paid for it to be transcribed. So the work has been done. It's been done probably twice, and yet It's still not there. As far when I checked yesterday.
So I'm gonna pull something up. I've got your appeal, and I want to. So someone's asking like how, basically on what grounds you lost, and I think the best way to answer that is to go through some of the appeals. I'm not gonna bring it up on screen because it's the way we're doing the chat is through Discord, and that's kind of a disaster to do that. But hold on one second. On the appeal, it talks about the specific errors that you're claiming that the judge has, and reading those was kind of interesting to me, so I'm going to read them real quick. So the first point is that the judge erred in law in ruling that the unequal bargaining relationship with the parties was not applicable. So what we talked earlier, this is a contract of adhesion where you had to agree to terms, otherwise you're precluded from enjoying their service because you have to click accept. You don't get a chance to line anything out. So the judge apparently ruled that doesn't apply here, which is a little strange because there's definitely not equal bargaining power in this situation. Your next one is that the judge erred in law in finding that there was no misrepresentation by the defendant, Calgary Comic, and no instance of bad faith on their part. Now, what I'm guessing you're talking about there is the difficulty in finding out what their name was, stuff like the music playing. Was there anything else that you would consider bad faith from their part?
Well, no. I believe that refers to that may actually refer to that, but this is just about the judge's finding, which wouldn't really have included the circus music or everything else that they did. I believe the bad faith is when they set out how you spoke about this in the beginning of the stream. They set out a particular procedure for how they would deal with any claims of harassment. Sure. And that procedure included acknowledging that a claim of harassment could itself be harassment if it was false. So you have to actually investigate the claim. They didn't investigate, and they didn't even follow their procedure for mediation, which was not to go immediately to banning me for 10 years from every convention, but to say, could you stop the behavior you're engaging in? If the behavior doesn't stop, then maybe banning them for a day, or going, there were stages to remediate the action, and they engaged in none of them. So they completely said, this is how we'll deal with this problem. These are the steps we'll take. We'll do an investigation. And then they didn't do any of it. And they put it in their contract that I was forced to agree to.
Okay, so this is bad faith on their contract, not bad faith in how they conducted themselves in court.
Yeah, this has been like how they conducted themselves throughout the trial is another matter entirely. Yeah, we're just talking about the contract.
Sure. So the next one is that the judge erred in concluding that the investigation carried out by the defendant, Calgary Comic, did not constitute a breach of its contractual obligations, notwithstanding that he found that the investigation was not thorough and the plaintiff had not been given any opportunity to provide your version of events. So we just kind of talked about that. They didn't follow through on their contractual obligations to have an investigation, to at least figure out what's going on before tossing you to the curb.
Yes. They said in their, I mean, how is it possible for you to find out if something's a false allegation if you don't get the other side? So literally they're saying we would do this investigation, we get your side, but we didn't do that. And the judge is saying, even though they said they would do that, somehow it was enough to fulfill their contractual obligations. It's like, it's mind boggling, because I could create a contract like this and sign it with you. And I could say, well, I'm going to deliver this service. That's in my contract, to deliver this service when this happens. And then say, I can interpret this in whatever way I like, not deliver the service, have this judge say, well, her not delivering the service is actually delivering the service.
Right.
Breach of contract denied. I mean, I don't know if I've explained that correctly.
No,
but essentially they said they would do
it.
something and they didn't. They said contractually said they would do something and they didn't. And then the judge said, that's okay.
Right. And how this is supposed to work, at least under US law, is when you don't have the opportunity to negotiate the terms of a contract, under US law, it's supposed to be read in the terms most favorable to the person signing the contract, not the person drafting the contract. It's read specifically against the drafter, because the drafter is presumed to be a sophisticated party. The person signing the contract is presumed to not be a sophisticated party. And if they have to just accept the terms of the other person, then the court says, well, I mean, we're okay with that for the sake of ease, but if there's a dispute, we're going to read it in the light least favorable to the person who wrote it. So the next thing, all the rest of the cause of action against the convention are about the contract, the investigation stuff not happening. But then, of course, there are claims against how the judge ruled in favor of the Mary Sue. So I've got the Mary Sue did not publish any false or disparaging statements. So what they basically said that you were aligned with Gamergate, right? Like that's what was, not that you had just simply mentioned them because you had some sponsorship, but you were something more. Can you talk a little bit about those?
No, that statements? Wasn't really that. Those weren't the false statements that we caught. The Mary Sue, which was Sam Maggs, who sort of is basically behind, has her fingers in all of this, was the editor of the Mary Sue at the time. And the Mary Sue published an article in which it alleged that I had infiltrated the convention I had falsified documents to infiltrate the convention. And they based this on a satirical statement I had made on the crowdfunding website, in which I said I had prepared to infiltrate a convention decades before it existed, basically. So It was completely satirical. It was tongue in cheek. It was silly. And they said they interpreted it as a literal intention to infiltrate the convention.
Well,
and they didn't even.
Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you had put hashtag sarcasm, everything would have been fine.
No, they would have probably said that the hashtag was sarcastic and the statement of infiltration was sincere. It was a complete misinterpretation or misrepresentation of what was said. It was an obviously satirical statement. And our legal agent, Harry, even pointed out, if you were intending to infiltrate a public event, would you announce your intentions in public?
Right. Now,
go ahead.
Yeah.
So they took that statement, they indicated it was a literal intention to infiltrate the event, and they didn't even ask the Calgary Expo if I had to look at my contract or look at any of the documentation surrounding my attendance at the Calgary Expo. So they did no research into their claim at all. And they certainly didn't contact me. And interestingly enough, through the process of this lawsuit, the defense submitted finally my contract. And my contract had on it my name and Honey Badger Brigade. So essentially, their own documentation indicated that I didn't infiltrate the convention under, I infiltrated the convention under my own name. And the other allegation was that I harassed one of the panelists, Brittany LeBlanc, at the Women into Comics panel. And of course, we had the recording and no harassment took place. Right. So both of these things were provably false. And they published them. That's where the falsehoods are coming from that article.
I've got a super chat to read here. Sergeant Sick Nasty says, Nick, please purge leaf soy from chat. Thanks. I'm not sure which leaf soy you're talking about, Sergeant Sick Nasty, but no, the chat has been very lively back and forth. I'm assuming he means some quote unquote soy boy Canadian in the chat, and there, I mean, I've been listening to you, but I've also been kind of monitoring what's going on in the chat, because it's interesting that there are two clear sides to you. You're a charged figure, and so there's a back and forth going on. But what kills me is like, so I get that you made a satirical statement. And even if it's not a satirical statement, guys, there's nothing wrong with making a statement that you're planning on infiltrating, making a public statement that you're planning on infiltrating an expo. The question is whether or not you did it under false pretenses, not whether or not you said you would do it under false pretenses, or at least that's what should be the issue. So as long as everything you did on the contract and agreed to, and the information that you provided is above board, that they have a chance to research you and see who you are. They can run, any sort of background checks. Like it's you mentioned that they provided the contract. You mentioned your legal name. You mentioned that you're from the Honey Badger Brigade. So there should be no possibility that they're under any real impression that you're someone other than who you are.
They knew. Since I had a booth at the Calgary, the booth that I had in Saskatoon in September of the previous year, they knew who I was from that point onward. Right. There's no way that they didn't know. In fact, when the operations manager evicted me, he mentioned that he had gotten, I guess, similar complaints about us being at the expo in Saskatoon, except, not enough to actually kick us or something. So he knew about us, and he must have known that we were controversial at that point.
Right. Now, I have to say, I live in a very small town, like 2,000, 2,500 people.
So do I.
But every time you say Saskatoon, I think of something that's smaller than my backyard. Actually, no. I think of something that's much bigger than my backyard, but has nobody in it. It sounds like the most rural bumpkin place on the planet. That's why I like Canada.
Saskatoon is one of the two larger cities in Saskatchewan. My hometown is only 1,000 people. Or where I live is only 1,000 people. But Saskatoon, I think, is getting up to about 125,000. So it's not a really big city.
They've got to rename it. They've got to rename it, because right now it sounds like a place with 4 people that get together at the same bar every night.
Saskamini, maybe.
So Jay O'Ballas says, aren't one of the reasons you can appeal in the U.S. based on procedural violations? Yeah, Jay, there are all sorts of ways you can appeal in the United States. Some of them are where the judge has made clear errors of law. There are appeals based on juries, where you say that no reasonable jury could make the finding that the jury in this case made. So there are all sorts of different ways you can appeal. But yes, procedural violations that the judge failed would be part of the clear error part, right? If there's a time limit of 30 days for the opposing party to do something, they do something in 40 days and it prejudices you, and the judge says, too bad. That would be one of those procedural violations that would be a clear error of law. I don't think we want to get into the nitty-gritty of the procedure, because getting into civil procedure in any court system makes me want to kill myself. But real quick, aside from that, Zephael has asked for a 10 or 30-second rundown for people who are coming into this blind, as people come into to pop in the live stream. We're talking right now with Alison Tieman, and what I'm going to ask you in a little bit is where you got the name Typhon Blue from, but that'll be in just a second. Alison Tieman, who is of the Honey Badger Brigade, recently sued the Calgary Expo and the Mary Sue, recently lost that case, and we're going to talk about one thing that a lot of people are kind of talking about as a reason you lost that case in just a second, and that is the counsel that you chose, who is Harry. And we're going to talk about why you chose him, or I'm going to ask you why you chose him, and hopefully you'll talk about why, and kind of, I don't know, either look at or dispel any of the sort of rumor mill going on there. But they lost their case and are now headed down the road to appeal because of specific errors that the judge made in how they analyze contract law under the Canadian consumer protection laws that exist. And if you don't know, Canada has very strong consumer protection laws, like that, probably much stronger than the United States has. And some people might argue that they're a violation of free speech or something like that. We're not going to get into that discussion here, but like, I just want to point out that you losing this case when there appears to be a pretty clear indication that they violated the contract that they made you sign, is actually a little alarming. Like, as I was reading through this, I was reading the cause of actions, and what little I do know about Canadian consumer protection law, just in talking to some Canadian friends, is that it's very strong. So to see your allegations and to find out that you lost this initial stage does seem like there was some sort of prejudice happening from the judge. Of course, not being involved in all of the proceedings, I can't say that for sure, but it feels that way. It absolutely feels that way.
Can you write that down so that I can just repeat that when people ask for me for a summary?
We can snip it out.
Yeah, just snip it out. I'm gonna like put it on as like a ringtone or something, and I'll just be like, "They're here. This is it."
Right.
You know,
yeah.
just listen to that. Thank you. Okay, so yes, you're right. Consumer protection is more powerful in Canada than it is in the US. So this is alarming, to say the least, because they've basically gone against all precedent. This ruling has gone against all precedent. It's gone against the law itself. And that might be why they're not making it public, so that everybody can look at it. And all Canadians can know that in one little swoop of the pen, Canada has decided that all of its consumer protections don't apply anymore.
Right. And guys, like, I know there are a bunch of naysayers here. And you have a bunch of naysayers about this, and we're going to talk about Harry in just a second, if you're willing to talk about him. But I want to point out that, like, having a judge make a decision that is adverse to the law is really not a surprise. If you spend much time involved with the legal industry or talking to lawyers, you will get judges who are wrong on the law. I mean, with alarming frequency. Just in my relatively short career, I've run into several judges who are outright wrong. I've had times in court where the judge is like, "Can you guys," to the two attorneys, me and the other person, "can you please tell me what the law says about this? Because I don't know." And we're talking about highly specialized judges, family court judges who only do family law, saying, "I don't know what the law says here." And it's like, well, why don't you? This is your one job, you dummy. But so to have a judge issue a ruling that's adverse to law is more common than people want to talk about. But the problem is the cost of appeal. And the risk of appeal is the prohibitive nature of this. And that's why you've been, on one hand, I'm glad you're fighting this, because if this judge made the wrong ruling, then ultimately for justice to be served, it's good to carry it through to the end. I know there's, of course, great personal cost and financial cost to you in doing so. So I don't want to dwell on this too long. I want to talk a little bit about Harry. And then if you've got time, I want to talk about kind of the future direction you've taken, what steps you're taking to help out during the appeal. If there's anywhere that, if people do support you, we definitely want to give them an opportunity to find out where they can do that. So this is probably the hardest question of the interview. And I didn't have this question prepared or anything, but it's just been popping up in chat. It's been popping up on Twitter. You hired a guy that was disbarred as your counsel, and that's a big criticism, is to have a disbarred attorney represent you. But as far as I understand, at the level you were at, there's nothing wrong with having a Harry is his name. There's nothing wrong with
Harry
having
could be, yeah,
right.
No, he could.
Go ahead. Sorry, you talk.
He could practice law. He could practice law in the civil court, the Civil Provincial Court of Alberta.
Okay.
So there wasn't anything impeding him actually practicing law. So yeah, there was no procedural reason why he couldn't do it.
So
okay.
he was disbarred though. And you sent me a link, but I frankly didn't have time to read through it. Can you give me a brief summary on why he was disbarred, if it's relevant at all to your case or anything like that?
The original reason he was disbarred was because of what something in Canada called scandalizing the court, which is essentially insulting the court. So what he said was I'm glad
that doesn't exist here. I'm guilty. Sorry.
What he said was that it's okay. You be glad that it doesn't exist there. What he said was that the police in Canada and the court system were tied together like they were crazy glued together. That's what he said.
That's what he said? Here, let me help out for everybody who's listening. The police in the United States and the courts in the United States are tied together like crazy glue. It's a corrupt, disgusting symbiosis that occurs. The judges in the United States work in the same office at the county level as the prosecutors. Guys, these guys go to lunch together. If you walk into a courtroom and a prosecutor is in there before you, the prosecutor is talking to the judge about what they're doing that weekend. They're having a conversation that you would have with a coworker around a water cooler. If you don't know that there is a disgusting relationship between, at least in regards to government, between prosecutors and judges in the United States, and I assume it's the same in Canada, it's a nasty, nasty thing to have to overcome as a defense attorney. And some of it is innocent. I mean, the same lawyer who's prosecuting every case for a county will sit in front of a judge for an entire day. They'll spend they'll spend 6 to 8 hours together going through case after case after case. But the thing to realize is that not only do they do that, but after they leave the courtroom, their offices are down the hall from each other. So there absolutely is this. In the Canadian system, there's another thing. If that's what he has said for, I find this funny mainly because in the chat, there's a person who has been talking about Canada having free speech. And I don't know how many times I have tried to tell people that first of all,
sorry.
Right. Not only
we're a fucking third world nation. We don't have buck for rights. That's the truth.
No, I know. Because every time I hear about any law regarding speech in Canada, they're like, yeah, we're a very free speech society, except you can't talk about this or this or this or this or this or this. And if you say something that we determine is hateful, then obviously, well, that's wrong. It's like, no. The U.S., as far as I can tell, is the closest thing we have to free speech. And that is sad because the U.S. doesn't have free speech either. Just throwing that out there. We may be doing better on it than other people, but we're not doing great. And Canada is certainly not a free speech nation. So it's funny that to me, because I didn't have time to research exactly why he was disbarred, but if it's truly because he criticized the court, that is the least free speech thing I can possibly think of.
Yeah. What you just said was exactly what he got disbarred for. The first time, scandalizing the court, but there was such a public outcry that they reinstated him. And then he was basically on their hit list at that point, and they searched for a less sympathetic reason to disbar him, and they found one. He made mistakes in his paperwork.
Uh-oh.
So they got him on fraud, allegedly.
Ah.
But here's the thing. All of the funds that were frozen during the investigation of his alleged fraud were released to him after it was done, after they had gotten their disbarment.
So they disbarred him, then they told him why they disbarred him.
Well, no, they told him why he was going to be disbarred for fraud, but after, because what happened was he was billing legal aid and he was making mistakes in his paperwork both ways. So he would overbill for one day and he would underbill for another. Right. And they looked at the overbilling for one day and they said, this is, you're committing fraud against legal aid. And they didn't look at the underbilling for the other days. But at the end of all this, all of the accounts that he had frozen during the investigation, money was released to him, because ultimately independent investigators found that he probably had undercharged legal aid. He just was really bad at bookkeeping. So They got him disbarred for being bad bookkeeper.
That's again, yeah, that's a frustrating thing. But so I'm glad you explained that, because it's important to know that Harry was not disbarred for being a bad representative of clients.
No.
He wasn't disbarred for being incompetent. Apparently he was disbarred for not being an accountant, which,
yes,
you know, I can identify with that. I'm a terrible bookkeeper. The only saving grace for me is that I don't bill legal aid. I just underbill my clients constantly, because I don't want something similar to happen. When I'm bad at keeping time, that's just my fault. But okay.
Yeah.
So,
well, he was basically underbilling legal aid as well.
Right.
But he wasn't keeping as good records as he, I guess, should have. And really what his big problem was is he ran afoul of some incredibly hostile people in the court. And they just groped until they found something to get. They could get you on that, no doubt.
Oh, no.
They could get any lawyer on that.
I'm squeaky clean. I'm perfect.
Yeah, well, you just admitted that you make errors in your bookkeeping.
No,
there you go.
I admitted that I underbill clients when there is an error.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you underbill clients. Okay, yeah, no, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I know that I'm on the spot, so let's switch that around.
No worries.
But
really,
you're
in the hot seat here, not me. What is this?
Yeah, what's going on here? What I mean by that is that everybody makes mistakes like this. I mean, it's the same kind of situation as show me the man and I'll find you the crime. They got him on a technicality, and and I saw that and I'm like, this is not, and I guess I have a soft spot for good guys who've been railroaded by the system.
Absolutely.
You can hang that on my neck.
You villain.
Okay. Yeah, I know.
Okay, so I want to move on from that, but I want to point out that by all accounts that we have, as far as representation, Harry has been competent representation for you, but with the appeal process going forward, he is not licensed to represent you during the appeal. So you'll be having a different representative at that point. I do have 2 super chats. One of them is a question for you, sort of. But let's address it. It's from GRP Poll. He says, I'd like to ask how she managed to get kicked out of a convention by feminists in the most conservative province in Canada that prides itself in its cowboy culture and oil industry. And if you want to address that, you can. Otherwise, I mean, I can preface it with the cancer of feminism is malignant and spreads rapidly, and where they have control would probably surprise you. But if you want to add thoughts to that, please go ahead.
I pissed, like, literally it comes down to, I pissed off a woman who had the power to hurt me. She would use feminism as her excuse and her deflection and her shield, but it really comes down to that.
Right.
So,
and one of my moderators, Clay, mentioned that I missed an earlier super chat, which I did, and I apologize. That was from Mithrin Emrys, and it was Clay needs a drink. My chat has a drinking game where when we get a super chat, they drink. When I drink, they drink. If you were to drink, they would drink. And there are various other things, like if I reread a document they drink, I think it's basically just drink constantly is the rule at this point. But so I don't want to miss that. Okay, so Merlo Williams asks, were you the one on Bloodapalooza with Medicare? And I'm sure you saw this.
I don't know
coming.
which one Bloodapalooza is.
But I think it's the internet blood sports is what they're talking about.
I know but there's like the Kumite, there's the internet blood sports. There's so many freaking names. I have been on now 2 streams with Medicare. One was, I think, the Kumite. I don't remember entirely. And then one was yesterday with Ethan.
Sure. So those were a significant amount apart, right? Because the Kumite was a long time ago. I think that stream has been shut down. Sure.
Sorry?
I think that stream.
Yeah, it was March 1st. Yeah, I think it's been shut down or resurrected or something, or they ate each other. I don't know.
But if Jim ever wants to come on my show, he's welcome to, by the way. I don't know if he would come on and like talk to you, but apparently you guys have talked, so that's not a...
He talked to me yesterday on Ethan's stream briefly. I mean, I'm like, this is the most, like I said on Ethan's stream, he's making me out to be far more interesting than I actually am. 1, 2, this is the most boring drama in all of human history. This is like 2 people sitting in a backyard with beers watching the fence paint dry. This is this drama. Like it's dull. And anyway.
Counterpoint.
I don't know why people are still interested in it.
Counterpoint.
And I'm keep repeating.
Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say.
I keep repeating the same answers over and over.
I was going to say,
all right, go ahead.
If you replace beer with whiskey, I'm down with that level of activity, sitting in a backyard watching paint dry.
Yeah, I mean, when he was on yesterday, it was almost like he wasn't feeling it. That's the sense I got. He's like, yeah. And he repeats the allegations, and I'm like, okay, well, this is my answer to those allegations. They haven't changed in 8 months.
Right.
And then he left.
Okay, so that's...
it felt like it wasn't, there wasn't the spark of the original anymore.
Sure, I
think the relationship's over.
You and Jim are no longer a thing.
We're no longer a thing. I don't feel like, I don't think we can continue. He's just not giving me the attention he used to. I don't know. Okay, sorry.
No, that's fine.
Let's get back to the...
Okay, I've got one more super chat. Zephael asks, or he says, always thought the Canadian-Mexico War would be better than other wars. Oh, and I just got one more. Jim wants the puppet man, that is all. And I think they're referring to Mundane Matt at that point.
No, I don't think he's they're referring to someone else. And you know what? That's always the way it is, isn't it? It's always the way it is. You get left at the altar for the best man, isn't it? Isn't it? That's the way it works.
You've been left at the altar for the man with puppets and alcohol.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, full disclosure, guys in the chat, anyone who might be watching this and watching it later, I know of Dr. Randomer Cam. I've watched a couple of his videos. He is not why I drink on stream, but he is why I found out you could drink on YouTube with impunity. But I'm not familiar with that drama, so we're not going to dwell on it here. I guess if you want to super chat and talk about it, I will take your money and talk about it to, all ends of the earth, because I am at essence the consummate capitalist, and I will take your money for whatever reason. But if you're looking for insight into that, you can talk about it somewhere else. There's something about a pedophile, and the only thing that I'll say about pedophiles is if you want to learn about how pedophilia is prosecuted in the United States, watch my stream about how to catch and convict a pedophile that I ran a few days ago. Since he has doxed himself, the person in that video is a guy by the name of Abraham Morales, who goes on Twitter by the name of Tito de Loera. I did not dox him. He himself posted my stream and identified himself, despite me redacting the documents. So that is your own stupid fault, Tito, you ridiculous pedophile. But So if you want to learn about pedophiles on my channel, go check that stream out. It is horrifying, it is terrible, and it is very dark, so bring liquor with that. We've got a couple more super chats, and then I want to move on and talk about what you've been up to in the meanwhile with Comicsgate, and talk about opportunities there and stuff like that. So Nicholas Melchiori says the Quarry King, referencing Monday Matt, I'm going to call him the original Puppet Man because of his racist polar bear. Good job, Mundane Matt. Good job disavowing jokes you made, buddy. Don't disavow jokes you made. You made the jokes. It's okay. You can make jokes that offend people. And people need to learn that. Bagel Goose says, I don't think you knew you were there, to be honest. I don't think he knew you were there, to be honest. I'm guessing he's referencing Jim
referring
at that point.
to the stream yesterday.
Sure.
I think he knew I was there. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I understand why you're saying that, because I'm pretty boring. So I can just sort of sit in a corner and nobody notices me. But, you know, I'm pretty sure he knew I was there because I was, you know, it was mentioned. And that was why people were calling him to the stream.
Sure.
So, sure. I mean, like, you know, fair enough. I'm not really noticeable. I get you at your point. I get what you're saying. But I think he was told. So just to clarify that.
All right. So what I want to do now is kind of transition. We've talked about the court case. It looks like there's certainly a possibility that the judge, without me knowing, you know how lawyers talk. There's certainly a possibility that the judge seems to have ignored the law here, ruling against you. And you certainly have, from what I can see, a reasonable grounds, at least, for appeal. The appeal is the document structure that you guys have is very different than what we do, but the appeal seems to be grounded in several bases of law that definitely deserve review. And that's something going forward. You sent me a video talking about you having, you mentioned that you are an independent comics creator. And what I wanted to talk to you, because I've been talking to Comicsgate guys, and apparently you have been too, because you've been on Ethan Van Sciver's stream. I did an interview with Ethan. I did an interview with Diversity in Comics. What is next for you? I mean, these guys are having wild success promoting their independent comics. Are you looking to try and get into that? I mean, and when I don't mean that in any sort of nefarious or opportunistic way, but it looks like there's a movement of independent comics creators that's rather welcoming, unless your name is Vox Day and you try and take their stuff. But otherwise rather welcoming to people coming in and just trying to make comic books. So what's going on with you, going forward in the future? I mean, I know you run Honey Badger Radio. That's an ongoing podcast and YouTube channel, but, what else is going on?
Haha. My evil plan to infiltrate this stream has borne fruit. Okay. I actually, you know, to be honest, when I went on Ethan's stream, I did so because it was recommended that I do. And I talk about this particular issue.
Sure.
I didn't go on the stream because I was thinking of promoting my comics. And I explicitly said, I don't really, to him, when he was like pushing me to do it, I was like, I don't really want to get pity sales, blah, blah, blah. But then the rest of his chat was like, do it, do it, do it. So I did it. And I actually got some sales. And the thing is, it's not necessarily the sales, but just the support. And I'm thinking maybe I should give it another go. You know, maybe I should try again to resurrect my story. I mean, I cared, like I put so much of myself into it. And going on Ethan's stream and actually being around people who care about comics and are creating comics and are working on comics, you know, it actually jump-started a bit of that drive in me. But the reason why I went on Ethan's stream was to just bring attention to this issue, because people said this is Comicsgate. The fact that I was marginalized for my views and removed from this convention, and now that's grown to potentially all the conventions that Informa runs, and Informa runs a lot of conventions around in Canada, the US, and around the world. So they would have an interest in this because it is prejudice in the comics book industry towards somebody who allegedly has conservative views or anti-feminist views. And so I went on and explained my story. But the side effect of that was, yeah, maybe I should give this another shot. I mean, for a long time, I don't know. It's hard to describe how, when you have something like this happen to you, how difficult it can be to go back to what you were doing before it happened.
Right.
And it's almost becomes like this conditioned response to your own work and your own story, where you just don't want to look at it because it's a painful thing that happened. And I think that actually being around comics pros who are working and building something, building a base, building interest outside of that entire industry, actually it was very healing in a way. So, I mean, going forward, I think I will pursue something. I mean, I can't do it right now because this lawsuit sucks so much of my soul and life. It's like being chained to a dark god. But maybe in the future, you know.
No, absolutely. And guys, again, if you haven't run across the legal industry, if you haven't run on the wrong side, if you haven't run on the wrong side of the legal industry, it's brutal. It's brutal. It's brutal to lawyers. I don't lose, of course not. But when things don't go favorably for a time, it's horrible. It's very awful. You feel powerless, and it's amplified for your clients because your clients have the real stake in the game, right? For lawyers, it's win-lose, and there's some pride involved. There's some, was my argument good enough? Did I do everything I could do? Sure. But for your clients, a lot of times this is the most important and influential aspect of their life to that point. And it's consequential in how their life will proceed going forward. So I can certainly identify with, and I hope that if people out there don't understand what that does to you, to go through this process that takes months and months and thousands of dollars and all of your emotional energy, and then to come out on the losing side, is devastating. It really is, and you should take no shame in that. But I should also say that you should take no shame in pursuing opportunities with communities that are willing to promote people who want to put out good work. So if I can give you a bit of personal, not legal advice, it is absolutely engage the Comicsgate community as much as possible, because they're people who are looking for. They're looking to spend money. They want to do it. They want to spend money on work that is appealing to them. And if you go out there and promote your product, there's no shame in that. If you certainly send me information, I will put it in this stream. So guys, look at the description of the stream later if you're interested in her book, because I would be happy to promote it. There's no shame in capitalism on this stream, and promoting your product is consummate capitalism. So you should definitely do that. Pursue what you want to do. And as far as your lawsuit goes, are you fundraising for that? How is that happening? Is there any way we can, I want to give opportunity for people who want to support you. I want to give them a chance to do so. Because if you guys don't know, I am taking all the super chat money here, and Allison is not getting a single cent of it because I'm greedy like that. But if people want to go ahead and support you, I want to give them the opportunity to do so, because it looks to me, at least from the outside, from a cursory glance, it looks like you were railroaded. Knowing I expected the judge to apologize for you because he's Canadian on behalf of the Expo and say, we're very sorry, this is not Canadian of us. We will definitely fix this. But he didn't do that, or she didn't do that, whichever it was. And so you definitely have the appeal going. So can people, where can people find your comic book? Where can people help you with your appeal? What's up with that?
Well, you can find, if you want to help with the appeal, it's at, and also the comic book, www.feedthebadger.com. The appeal is the first item on that page, and it just says help us appeal or appeal fundraiser. And then if you scroll down, you can also see Buy Xenospora, which is my book. And that's there courtesy of Ethan and his viewers, because my book was actually buried in the shop of the website until I put it in the front page due to their pressure.
Well, good.
So they were like, shill it.
Shill it. Shill it. If Comicsgate teaches nobody anything else, it's that, you know, these communities want to support the people that they like. So let them support you. Absolutely. We'll shill it here. You know, Ethan has a much bigger audience than I do. And so I hope you get some sales out of it, but I also want to let the stream know, Alison did not ask me for anything like this. This is me promoting, out of just my own free will and the will for people to create and to follow. And probably because I'm in a good mood, because if you guys missed the announcement at the beginning, I have decided to pull back my law practice. I will still be an active attorney practicing law, but I will be much more selective in cases, and I will probably only take one case at a time. But I'm going to be focusing quite a bit more on my education, entertainment, and outreach through this YouTube channel and stuff like that. So I'm in a creative mood, I guess, but definitely promote your product. We'll promote it as much as possible. But yeah, is there anything else you want? Like, now we're at full open time. We've talked about the lawsuit. We've talked about the big controversial issue, which is Harry. We touched on internet blood sports, but I don't want to like sit and dwell on drama that's 6 months old or 7 months old or however old it is. I'd much rather talk about, you know, anything else like social justice in comics, social justice in games. You were, of course, associated or affiliated with Gamergate in some small way. Are you still affiliated with that movement? What I'm gonna let you tell me anything you want about your story at this point.
And the chat groaned. No, don't do that. Don't.
Tell me tell me what pisses you off, because you know, you call yourself boring, and I get the self-deprecating sort of thing, but there are things that animate you. Clearly, we've had a couple things on this stream that have gotten you a little bit riled up and fired up. So what are they? I mean, you have a much bigger audience than I do. Honey Badger Radio has many more subscribers than I do. You've been around a lot longer. You know, don't sell yourself short on being boring. There are things that piss you off, and I want to know what they are.
What pisses me off? Okay. This ruling really pisses me off. The thing is that when I've been hearing a lot about selling a pity story or a sob story, and the truth is that's not why people support me. The reason why they supported me is because when this happened, I said, okay, I didn't say, oh my gosh, guys, people were mean to me. Give me money so I can pay off these expenses and get the money that I sunk into this back. I said, give me money so I can get in the fucking ring and take a chunk out of these fuckers. That's why people supported.
Good.
You know, and that's exactly what I wanted. It's not over yet. I can get back in the ring and I can go for round 2. And this ruling is shit. It's absolute fucking shit. I'm scandalizing the court now, everybody. So I might actually get pulled up in front of a Canadian court for scandalizing the court because I said this ruling is shit because it's shit. So
we have crimes being committed actively on this channel. I love it.
I'm ready. Send me back into the fucking ring. You know, www.feedthebadger.com. I will go. I will do another round of this, and it's higher courts. The stakes aren't necessarily bigger, but it's a little bit more, I guess it goes a little further than the civil court, you know, so let me at them.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's one thing that pisses me off is this entire situation. What really pisses me off about this entire situation isn't what happened to me. What really fucking pisses me off, because let's face it, when this happened to me, I was moderately successful on YouTube. Okay. So I had a bit of a platform with which to fight back. What really pisses me off is this has proven to me that justice is completely inaccessible to the average person in Canada. Completely inaccessible. Because there are things in my favor that are not in the favor of the average person. They don't have a moderately successful YouTube channel. They aren't a freaking OCD obsessive like me that can construct a story out of bit of Twitter fragments and glue and fucking, I don't know, Robin vomit. Like, they don't have the ability to sit down, take time away, and just wood chipper their way through legal stuff and all kinds of like paperwork and bureaucracy. Like, there's things that were going in my favor that made me able to fight back that I can see are completely inaccessible to the average person. And it's like, that means that I live in a world that might as well call itself a fucking third world country. That's right, Canada. We're a fucking third world country. Because what makes us different than a fascist hellhole is rule of law. And if rule of law is not accessible to the average person, then we don't have it. We're no goddamn better. We're no goddamn better than the worst. Well, I guess we have nobody dying in the streets. That's better. We got some prosperity. We're a third world hellhole with prosperity. That's Canada. That's our shithole of a nation. And the fact is that one judge could, with just one swipe of his fucking pen, take away all of the consumer protection rights for Canada. What reason does he fucking have for doing that? Oh, and there's people in the chat who are like, oh, you're Gamergate. Okay, so you're going to sell out your protection, your law, your protection of law, because you want to get at people you don't like. Well, you don't deserve it then. Well, and you know what? The Canadian government is going to give you what you want. It'll take your rights away, so it'll go after the people you don't like, and then guess what it's going to do next? It's going to go after you dumb fuck. And it just, all of this just pisses me the fuck off. So yes, this does make me angry. The willingness I see on the left, not so much on the right, but on the left, to just destroy rule of law so that they can get one over their philosophical enemies. And then the complete inertia of people who just look the other way and are like, oh yeah, ho-hum, who cares? It's not me. And it's just like, it is you. Because you live in this country. If you're Canadian, you live in this country. This ruling now applies to you. Anyone you can sign a contract with a corporation tomorrow, and they're basically signing a blank piece of paper that they can write whatever the fuck they want on it. And you are signing a binding agreement because of this. And all of this is because, why did this happen? And I'm looking at this, how is it possible that a judge can take this away from people in Canada? This can be, and that's why they don't want to make it public, because this is so fucking retarded bullshit. If Canadians weren't so fucking inert, they should be up in arms over this, that this one judge could do this. And it's like, so like I said, it's the people who are willing to destroy rule of law or the neutrality of our financial systems just for a fucking gotcha against their political enemies, and the people who are not fighting back against this bullshit. That really pisses me off. And again, it really pisses me off that Canada gets to have a seat at the UN. Because you know where we should be? We should be in the Council of Shithole Nations that don't have human rights. Because they aren't human rights if they don't apply to all humans. Okay. Do you want to find something else that pisses me off?
In just a minute, maybe. I want to say though, you know, you're very, very entertaining when you're pissed off, and it's in a good way, in a not satirical way. Your passion is great, and to put it out there, what you said applies to Canada, absolutely. And you will never catch me not making fun of Canada. That's one of my primary hobbies. But it applies in a lot of ways to the United States. I mean, we're right behind the cuckinator scale on Canada for giving into these weird little movements of weird little people, and I'm gonna call them weird little people, who have this tiny minority of society, but have a voice that's bigger than anything because corporations think that Twitter matters, right? Like they think that because a bunch of people with pronoun identifiers in their Twitter profiles whine about something, that anybody outside of Twitter actually cares. They think that we need to be beholden to this little permanently and professionally offended minority. That's something. The U.S. is not far behind, and that makes me a very sad person. But I want to ask you,
all our weird bullshit to you guys. We're like the petri dish where all the fucking designer viruses are developed, and then they're just injected into the U.S. Continue.
I want to. So we've got GRP poll says, if you think Canada is a third world country, move away. I can tell you that you could definitely afford a house in another third world country. And I want to respond to that for just a second, because yes, on one hand, the people who are there are times to move away, right? If you're a farm owner in a certain country that's having your farm threatened to be taken away, like the United States in 1945, when FDR was taking farms away from the Japanese, we'll say that as a relevant example, and we'll not talk about anything going on today. But or if you're a white farmer in Zimbabwe under Robert Mugabe, when they were just shooting them in the streets and taking their farms, like move away, protect your life, preserve your rights, and get out. But there is also a time to stay and fight, and we do need people to stay and fight, because if we give up these countries, if we give up every country, eventually there's only one country left that will stand against this stuff. And I'm not sure it's the United States right now. It kind of seems to be, but think of it as like California versus Texas, right? If all of the Californians move to Texas and there's no one to save California, eventually the people who like California will then move to Texas to change Texas. So I don't know if you want to respond to that, the idea that you should move away rather than fight. What's your perspective on that?
I'm a fucking Canadian. I'm not moving away. I'm going to fight. This is my country.
Hockey and maple syrup for
it's like my country, good or bad. How does the saying go? Stand for your country if they're right, and if it's wrong, to be made right. This is my country. I mean, I don't have a problem with the States. You guys can be a little boorish, but that's just a Canadian thing. Don't talk so fucking loud. People can hear you from goddamn Mars. But we're, no problem with the States. You get very, very, very friendly people. But this is my country.
Right.
This is an injustice, and all of this bullshit about these human rights tribunals where they're creating hierarchies of humans, and certain humans get rights and others don't. Well, like I said, it's not human rights if it doesn't apply to all humans. Well, yeah, all of this bullshit sickens me. But it's still my country. You can't just fucking leave when something needs your help to be better.
Right. I agree with you. You can't leave. Like I said, you leave when it's protecting your family's lives, when the battle is lost. But if there's a battle to fight, there's certainly merit and virtue in staying, and fighting for what you believe, because that's how free societies work, right? Like there's one group that believes one thing, there's another group that believes another thing. And if you fight about it, you come to some sort of middle ground. That's the idea. You either come to a middle ground, or you come to a point where society just won't decide on either side. And that's okay too. Like, as long as no one's rights are being oppressed, if society's like, you know what, you can have your beliefs, you can have your beliefs, and you guys can hate each other all day, as long as under government we're not infringing on people's rights. Like, that's an okay solution too. But without one side fighting, you get one answer, and you only get one answer, and that has a chance, no matter what side it is, of changing from a free society to an unfree society. So Jay O'Bala says, maybe not the UN. Saudi Arabia and China are on the Human Rights Council. That was
well, there you go. Canada can fit in right between them.
Right. And that's about, I mean, the UN is a joke. The UN's about money, and the UN has nothing to do with any reasonable sort of interactions between it's a shortcut. And guys, when government bureaucrats come together and form a shortcut to government bureaucracy, we should all be terrified, because if governments come together to form a shortcut, it's the opposite. So if you get a bunch of these idiots in a room, you can only imagine that nothing will be done, but it'll cost a fortune. So next we've got GR people responding to you. It's my country as well. You are not a Canadian, which I think is maybe a strong claim, because you appear to be a Canadian.
Yeah, I'm a Canadian.
But you know, I'm not sure what they're talking about, but that's the whole thing, right? Like the idea that two people can disagree and still live and coexist in a free society without unpersoning or taking away the rights of the other party. That's what makes a free society. Not laws that boost one demographic, be it race, be it gender, be it identity, be it Magic the Gathering deck preference. You know, that's not what makes a free society. What makes a free society is when people can disagree and coexist without the force of law favoring one over the other. When Lady Justice is blind, right? That's what we have.
Okay, well, I would like to answer that.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Why are you angry at me and not this fucked up judgment? I'm not the one that's turning Canada into essentially something that can't really call itself a first world nation, because first world nations have rule of law. And you know what? Maybe there are no first world nations left on Canada. Left on the world. We're all just becoming empty shitholes.
Sure. And
without real human rights. Without real human rights. Like, real human rights apply to all humans. No exceptions. White people deserve rights. Black people deserve rights. Gay people deserve rights. Straight people deserve rights. Men deserve rights. Women deserve rights.
Whoa.
Because they're all human.
Let's not get too hasty. I don't know if men deserve rights. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, obviously. But
no, I'm not. Oh my God, you're expecting me to respond like a feminist? I'm not going to freak out.
No, not for you, but for the random feminists that might be in chat. Don't hate me, bro.
I think you missed a chat, by the way. There's a $2 one there.
There's a $2 one. Oh, from Azure Hydra. Yes, be angry about comics in the attic. Tell its story. I don't know what that means. Comics in the attic. You must know that.
All of my comics. Have you seen the video that I did with all my comics in the attic?
Yeah, you had boxes and boxes and
boxes and boxes. Yeah, we'll get angry about it. I don't know how to make that into something interesting. Like, yeah, it's a lot of boxes in an attic. Am I angry about the boxes in the attic? It was a good story. You know, I went on the stream yesterday with Ethan. They weren't really fond of the artwork. I think that I come from maybe much more of an indie background.
Sure.
I mean, they're talking about Dave Sim. If you've ever seen Dave Sim's artwork, Dave Sim's artwork is nothing like Marvel artwork or any of the artwork on that stream. It could even be considered ugly, but it serves the story because it really brings out a lot of the character in his creations. So I think that there may be a difference, maybe a difference in, not to say that I can't definitely improve my artwork, which is absolutely true, but there may also be like a bit of a disjointedness between people who are interested in Marvel comics or Marvel type comics and people who are more interested in more indie comics. Not to elevate one or the other or to create some sort of competition, But in terms of getting angry, you know, I think I wrote a really good story, and I think I had the right to participate and try to sell it in public to people in conventions, and that was taken away. Like, I love this story. It's a great story. It is, okay, one way I've described it is Romeo and Juliet meets War and Peace in space. Another way is heavy metal meets War and Peace in space. So I don't know. I don't think I could be in a room with somebody who doesn't get excited at that. I mean, I think that maybe you are the people who don't deserve human rights if you don't get excited at that elevator pitch. All right. There you go.
Okay, so GRP poll has responded to you, saying Canada just ruled in favor of the Native Americans over the federal government. You're telling me that's a third world country. I'm not familiar with this, but maybe you are.
Yes, actually, because once again, we are creating a hierarchy of human rights.
Right. Like once you choose, I think what you're trying to say is once you choose a demographic and prioritize it over another demographic, you essentially, some people call it reverse racism or something like that. But you prioritize a protected class over other classes, then the class that isn't protected has lost something, right? They're not equal.
And the other thing is, yes, the other thing is that a lot of their stuff that they're talking about does not include Native men. And I'll be quite honest with you, most forms of discrimination against minorities hit men worse. And what I see happening repeatedly, and you see this with the Black Lives Matter movement, it started out with Black men being shot, and somehow, somewhere along the line, you go look at their website, Black men disappeared, and it all became about issues that Black women face, and then somehow women face, and women are people who are not or transgendered face. So even though every group of people that's a minority, you could take a subset of them, men, those minority men, all of them face racism, homophobia, ableism, whatever you want to look at. They face it worse than the women in that group. They're the ones who end up being erased from concern. And that actually isn't doing anything. It's not going to stop anything. Look at the inquest into Aboriginal murder. There are people in part of our group, our movement, who have asked them to include missing and murdered Aboriginal men, and they aren't going to do it, even though they vastly outnumber missing and murdered Aboriginal women. So here's the thing: you're never actually going to address racism, homophobia, and all of these other forms of marginalization if you make the male victims invisible. You'll never address them. And in the center of all of these initiatives is that kind of marginalization of men.
Yeah, I certainly get that, because going back just kind of in the research I've done, if you talking about Black Lives Matter and it originating with Black men being shot, particularly by police, the number of Black women shot by police is very small. The number of women shot by police is a very, very small number. And now people will make all sorts of, what's interesting to me is people will make all sorts of arguments defending that the number of women being shot is much lower than police because women commit less crimes because blah, blah, blah. But then what they won't do is they won't apply a parallel argument to how enforcement in Black communities works. What they'll say is, well, women aren't shot because they're not being, if you look at the arrest rates of women, they're much lower for violent crime. Does that necessarily mean women are committing less violent crime? Or does it mean that policing of women is being done differently? And if you bring up that argument in a Black versus white context rather than a men versus women context, you're a terrible human being. But if you bring up that argument in a women versus men context, you're a pro woman supporting person, and that's a little weird how that works out. But well, I like what you're saying there. It makes a lot of sense that and I've heard this. I'm gonna butcher this. But I've heard this sort of proposition is that these movements. These movements are by, and this is the words of someone else. Whatever I need to do to ward this off. If I had holy water, I'd sprinkle it on my camera. But the women are the people with less to do, is the theory, and so they have time to run these movements. So then the issues in these movements are skewing towards the women running them, whereas the men are either getting killed, apparently, like in Black Lives Matter, or they're working, or they're just not standing up. And so you've got a female protest going on, and then of course the natural reaction of that protest is to skew towards the demographic pushing it. Is that something you would agree with? I mean, I don't know where I'm pulling that from. Maybe I made it up, but I don't think so.
Okay, well, I mean, it is true that women have been traditionally involved in a lot of these kinds of social, like trying to create positive change, social or charitable movements. I just wanted to address something because somebody said I didn't actually say my comic name. Okay, the name is Xenospora. You can get it at www.feedthebadger.com. Once again, heavy metal meets war and peace in space.
And that will be in the description of the video when it is uploaded for a replay. So if you want to find out where that is, if you don't want to like try and remember the link, just come back and pop in the description. I'll update it as soon as we're done here. And
to answer your question, well, I think I did. I think women are very much associated with these kinds of movements. They're very much traditionally associated with advocating for the vulnerable. Now, usually the traditional association is not women and minorities, but women and children. But there's something about women advocating for the vulnerable that I think is supported by our instinctual makeup as well, because of the association between women and children. So, or the early years of childhood. I think what's really happening is something that I call the negative sum game. And the way the negative sum game works, and you might be able to figure out some examples of yourself if you think about it, is if we see a problem only affecting women, we care. If we see that it also affects men, we don't split our concern between the men and women. It goes away entirely. So if a problem affects 100 women, like 50 women, we care. We want to help those 50 women. If it also is seen to affect 50 men, we don't like split our funding and give 50% to the women and 50% to the men. We stop caring about the thing entirely, to the point where we don't even care about the female victims. And this is something I've seen over and over and over again. One example is Dutch Oxfam and a group that was helping male victims of wartime rape. Incidentally, wartime rape is something that affects men and women as victims fairly equally, except men tend to be murdered after they're raped. Women aren't, and they're also raped more horrifically. So there's this group called Refugee Law Project was getting help for victims of wartime rape, and they were trying to help men and women. And Dutch Oxfam told them that it would yank their funding for the entire project if the number of men they ever helped went over 30%. So if they helped too many men, they would get rid of all of their funding and stop helping the women too. Wow. And this is something I've seen over and over and over again. Once you bring male victims into the picture, it's not that we split our concern between the two groups of victims, it's we stop caring entirely. And it's a really, really ugly thing that I'm seeing. And one of the aspects of it is when I talk about, for example, Islam, I also bring up the issues that men face in Islam. And my personal opinion is there is no real reason to try to compare the problems that women face in Islam to the problems that men face in Islam. A religion that teaches its sons to sacrifice themselves by blowing themselves up is not doing shit for them. I'll put it that way. Now, when I bring this up, people say that I'm apologizing for Islam when I say that Islam has even more victims than just the women.
Sure.
It's the same idea. It's that I actually am saying they have more victims, but no, because I'm bringing male victims into the picture, I'm actually excusing Islam for its extremism. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
there's other situations where this happens, where I bring in male victims of something, and immediately they will say that I'm excusing the issue by bringing up men. And the other thing that is an example of this is when this happened to me, when I was evicted from this convention, I was talking to a bunch of people on Twitter about it, and I said, how many women would you do this to? You would do this to all of them. And you know what they said as a rebuttal to do you know what they said as a rebuttal to me telling them that they would destroy the career and kick out of a community every single woman on the planet if she disagreed with feminism? You know what they said?
No.
Do you want to guess?
No, I want you to tell me.
Well, they said, but we do it to the men too, as a way of excusing it. I'm not kidding. Zero-sum game. As soon as we see it happen to male victims, we don't care anymore. That's what they were doing. They were doing, well, we'd also victimize men, so the women we victimize, that means that they're not really victimized. Ha! Lovely little game, eh?
Yeah. Okay, so I do have a couple more super chats to go through. GR People responded to you, saying the Native Americans have always had legal rights. You should know this as a Canadian, in all caps. And this is about a pipeline ruling, not men or woman. I don't know if you have any response to that. We kind of moved past the topic of that, but if you do,
yeah, I think they were talking at cross purposes. So I'm not sure if I really have a response to that.
Sure. And I don't know, I don't know if they're talking about any of the pipeline rulings that have happened in the U.S. I will say that there's some weird stuff going on with those pipeline rulings involving questions about who actually owns the land, where the pipelines are actually running, at least on the U.S. side. At least one of the lawsuits appeared to be challenging the right of the pipeline to go through areas, alleging that the pipeline was interfering with reservation land. But when you looked at the maps, the pipeline actually didn't run on the reservation. So I'm not sure if that's what they're referencing. I'm not familiar with it, so I don't want to comment on it too much. But Space Shank also said, Alison, you're such a sweetie, which was very nice of them, I think.
Yeah, that's very nice of you.
And on sort of this note, you've been talking a lot about men. You're a men's rights activist, and I want to ask you, this question might be a little unorthodox from your other interviews, but I kind of wonder what kind of relationship do you have with your dad?
Can I answer that after I get my cord, because I'm at 10%, and can we take a bathroom break?
Yeah,
I hate
go
to
ahead.
ask, but
Go ahead. Go ahead. Not a problem at all. This went way longer than you were planning, I think.
Yeah.
So go grab your cord and go grab a bathroom break, and we'll be here when you get back.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know. It's like, what's your relationship with your mom? Okay, I'll be back. Just I have to.
Absolutely. I'll just sit here and tell jokes. Oh my gosh. Guys, so I love my job. And I'm talking about being a lawyer, but I love this job too. There's something just great about talking to people, hearing their stories. So, as we have this kind of unplanned break, I have no material. I have none. 100% professional. There's no bumper material here. So, talk to me about what you want to see. Cause, so ideally, like I'll tell you my plans, as I scale back my law practice, and it's going to take a little time, but as I scale back my law practice and start focusing a lot on this, we're going to be doing multiple videos a week. We're talking 3 to 5 videos or live streams a week. We're going to be we're gonna be doing. I want to do more interviews. I love talking to other people, and not just internet personalities. You know, obviously internet personalities help me with growth, help me with exposure. But I want to talk about, I want to talk to other people too, other attorneys. I want to talk to, I love stories. I love the stories that people experience. And I found that even the most boring person you've ever met has a story or something to get to. And I want to get to that, more. But what do you guys want to see? Rajveer said she wants you to open Bob. I don't know what she means. I don't know, but Raj, I see you in the chat and you crack me up constantly. Zephael, I'm staying in law, but, you know, I want to contextually find more people to talk to in that. What is going on with Google and Damore? Not a lot. There's not a lot of updates. That's why I haven't been doing too many videos on them. I have in my Discord server, I actually have a bot that alerts me when anything is filed in that case. So the next time something is filed, there will be something there. I know I have not gotten a hold of Peter Samedi. Peter Samedi, if you see this and if someone wants to clip it out and send it to him, buddy, come sit down and talk to me. I love talking all things Mark Wade. Mark Wade and his legion of comic professionals who are all legal experts are my favorite people on earth to talk about. Please come sit down and talk with me. I would love to talk about Alterna Comics. You're talking to a guy who hasn't bought comics in 20 years. Come teach me why to buy Alterna Comics. Come teach my audience why to buy Alterna Comics. Come talk about employee policies. Come talk about being opposed to censorship and that somehow being skewed is bad. I would love to talk to you. I think we have some great things to talk about. Interview Vox. I'll interview Vox Day any day of the week. Any day of the week. So yeah. But so yeah, if you guys can help me, don't you dare ask that woman about her father. You can sleep in your office tonight, Rekieta Law. Hey, Real Lady Rackets, you said you were going to bed. Don't mess with me. This is my show. Just 1 second. Let's see. What am I doing? Wait a minute. There was some question I was looking at. Oh yeah, but if you guys can help me get a hold of Peter Samedi, I would love to talk to him. Absolutely. If Vox Day wants to come on my show after I told him that he was completely wrong on the law and talk about it, I'm happy to talk. I don't have a problem with Vox Day. I have a problem with how he tried to insert himself into Comicsgate just because it looks like a violation of U.S. law. And I'm happy to talk to him about that and talk to him about what he's doing. I don't care. But yes, I was asking, despite Real Lady Rackets, Lady Rackets is my wife, just so you know, over her protests, I was asking, what your relationship with your dad was like. And that's in the context of you are a men's rights advocate. I'm wondering if there's a connection there to your dad, if there's a connection to something. So just talk to me about that.
I'm just laughing at the Show Us the Bob book. I mean, you know what Bob is, right?
Yes, I do.
I'm not showing. I don't know. Well, actually, maybe you're not asking me to show the Bob.
I think they might be asking me to show the Bob. I don't know. But I know they do want you to show your book. So do you have a copy? Do you have a copy nearby?
A copy. Yes, I do. Okay, no. Well, this one
I haven't emailed him yet, Cass.
Give me a second. I'll go get it.
Sure.
Complete silence. All right. Okay, I'm back.
I'm not trying to change the context here, guys. Okay, so this is your book, Xenospora. And my internet is being garbage, so slow down on the.
No, mine is probably like I live out in the middle of nowhere, and it's Volnet. We have trained voles that send packets of data.
through
subterranean network.
Through a series of pipes laid down by Al Gore, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm. Actually, Al Gore did put in place the legislation that led to the internet. So there you go. So she asked for your bob. It was super crass, though. Yes, especially with my husband in the other room, right? Oh, Jesus. This is going to end up on IBS. She cocks her husband with internet lawyers.
Okay, but we are getting demands from the chat. We do need to know what your relationship with your dad was like, if that had anything to do with the men's right. And like, these are separate questions. So if you could talk about your relationship with him, and then we can move on to how that did or didn't lead into the men's rights stuff. Go ahead. I'll give you the floor.
My relationship with my father. Well, he's Dutch, so there you go. I was a kid who struggled a lot in school, and I think the only reason really I got through it was because he did whatever he could to help me learn. I think that's possibly one of the most impactful things that he did for me. He would spend time to help me learn how to read. He created a program, because he's a programmer. He created a type of Pac-Man to teach me how to spell. So you play Pac-Man, and if you got hit by the ghost, you would have to spell a word to save your life, and then you could continue. And so he did things like that to try to get me to be able to learn these things, because I struggled a lot with reading and writing. And he also read to me to sort of inspire, I guess, me to read more. He actually read the J.R.R. Tolkien's oh God, my mind is blanking. It's not The Hobbit. Oh my God.
Not the Lord of the Rings.
I swear to fuck, I know I sound like a complete idiot.
The Lord of the Rings trilogy, or the Silmarillion?
Oh, no.
Oh, so
Lord of the Rings.
The big super popular one. Like the...
Kick her out. She's a fake nerd girl. The super popular one that everybody knows, that my brain just refused to get out of the informational stacks in the back. Yeah, so he would read for me from that at night before I would go to bed. So that's the kind of relationship I had with him. He really encouraged a lot of me academically, but also creatively as well.
Yeah, I mean,
although go ahead.
It sounds like he was a very positive influence in your life, that he was encouraging to you, but you said something a little strange, and I want to circle back to that because it's just interesting. You said he's Dutch. What? Like, I mean, I have Dutch people in my family, but I'm curious what you mean by he's Dutch.
Well, the Dutch are a little bit brusque. They could be very critical. They can be I think that's basically the Dutch. Like, they're very blunt and honest. So I would say that he could also be very critical, which is not a bad thing when you want to improve, you know. So there was the good, supportive, but also critical. And, you know, when you're around enough Dutch, you learn not to take it too personally too. Just roll with the punches with the Dutch.
Okay, so
they know what I'm talking about.
So what I'm getting is your dad was very he was very encouraging, helped you learn to be creative, to pursue an education, but also he was firm. So you'd say like a tough but fair sort of
honest. I would say he was an honest guy. So if there were places where I fell down, he would tell me. In fact, the best compliment I ever got from him is I showed him something and he had absolutely nothing. He couldn't say a damn thing. I could see him. I could hear the wheels squeaking in his head, but he was like, at the end, he couldn't. He was just like, yeah. That's good. So he could be, you know, he set a high bar, but he helped me get there. So there you go. That's my dad.
So how did was he an influence in your pursuit of like advocating for men's rights, or did that come later? Like what built into that? Because I mean, there's obvious novelty in the idea of female men's rights advocates, and you're certainly not the only one. There are very prominent female men's rights advocates out there. But like, what brought you to the idea that you needed to be the voice for men?
Well, I'd never really thought of being the voice for men. I just was like the thought of being just talking about the things that interested me. Now, to get where I sort of started in this, it was my mother actually who gave me a book called The Princess at the Window. And what really got me involved wasn't actually like a personal experience or anything. It was just the fact that this was forbidden knowledge. And I'm like, yeah, that, you know, like if you're gonna put a whole bunch of like, don't go there signs on something, that's not gonna help me not be able to go there and find out for myself what this is about. So it was like this whole thing that this whole like subject matter that you weren't really supposed to talk about or read about or know about, that nobody was really interested in or looking at, and that in of itself made it really attractive to me. So I just started to explore it and research it and think about it. And then when I got online, I started talking to people who are also interested in this kind of stuff. Some went into it because of horrible experiences in family court, or they were men who had experienced being sexually assaulted by women or by men and being marginalized because of it, or they had endured domestic violence, or all kinds of horrible personal stories. And then there were some people, very, very few, who actually just were like, this is knowledge that you're not supposed to know about. I want to know more, you know, that kind of thing. And for me, that sort of came out of my curiosity. So it just made me curious. So I explored it. And when I was first talking about this on the internet, I was pretty much the only woman talking about it, because that was like 20 years ago. So, no, wait, 20 years? Well, 18 around. So and that was pretty much before all of this other social crap that you guys call the internet, which really isn't. That was like BBS's, IRC, news groups.
Did you,
I mean, the real old school stuff.
Did you ever play awesome BBS games and then progress into MUDs like Legend of the Red Dragon or any of the big MUDs that came out? I mean, I know you're flexing your old school internet nerd cred, but like,
no, I'm not really. I'm just
deep
like,
are we here?
Stuff that's not too far on the BBSs, but I used to leech on IRC, so there you go. You know, so BBS was a little bit before my time, so I just maybe did a bit on like just posting stuff on them. So I didn't really do any games or anything like that.
Sure.
But definitely IRC, definitely news groups. And what I mean by that is, you know, at that time, people actually thought about what they wrote on the internet in some ways. And it probably was because it was only like, what, 10 people on the internet at that time?
Yeah.
All of them with PhDs.
Right, right.
No, I'm being facetious.
Okay.
There was at least 12.
Oh my gosh. I have to tell you, my wife is in the room and she's being absurdly distracting while you're here. Can you give me that note? I'm not going to read it to everybody. I'm just going to read it. Get out of my office, sex lady. Get out of my office, sex lady. Okay, she's being terrible. Get out of here. Get out of here. I'm this is my job. Go away. Ow. Go to bed. Sorry. Your husband's in the other room. My wife's in this room being a pain.
My husband is in the other. I don't even know what he's doing. He's probably playing a game. I could ask him.
Okay, so
wait. I think I hear him stirring. Maybe he'll also be a pain.
He's stirring and lumbering into the room to ruin a perfectly good interview. So, okay, I have a follow-up question. This is, and this may sound weird to you, but just bear with me. Are you wearing shoes right now? Like, 'cause,
no, actually, I'm not.
I usually don't either. But if you were wearing shoes right now, what would they be like?
Oh, they'd be really like my shoes. I don't really spend a lot of money on shoes. I have one pair of like Skechers, like pullover Skechers that are in like a light beige that look like crap. So,
why?
I don't know. Shoes have never really interested me. Like nothing really. I'm not really into a lot of clothing or that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So shoes are just a practical thing for me. So until the Skechers cause me pain, I'll probably keep them. I have been like thinking about getting some new Skechers. I'll probably just get the Skechers because it's too much effort to actually go shoe shopping. So I'll just go to a Skechers store and be like, yeah, these ones are cool. So
Gotcha.
Am I supposed to have exciting footwear? I didn't realize.
No. it's just sort of a. These are required questions. And the explanation for it is long, but there are things that the chat wants to know, and so I have to. You know how this goes. You run a YouTube show. You have to abide by the chat at some point. There's certain,
of course,
certain
chat is
things
God
that have to be known. So that's it. Well, I mean, I have loved this interview. I'm not saying it's over, but I think we talked before about staying for like an hour, and I don't want to keep you any longer than you want to stay here. So if you have more to talk about, I'm happy to keep going, but it's been a long time. So I want to give you the opportunity to say, you know what, Nick, you talk way too much and I need to go. And blame me for that, because I will talk to people literally as long as they will sit in a room with me. Are there?
Somebody said, "Are they light up? Are there light up Skechers? Seriously?
Are there light up Skechers? I think there are light up Skechers. Are you intrigued by light up Skechers? I gotta view
this for myself. Light up Skechers. My hard. Oh, there are. That's really awesome.
Do they have different
Maybe
colors?
I'll get myself some light up Skechers. I'll splurge. Really earn that name, Money Badgers.
Do they have different colors?
Walk around in some light up Skechers.
Like I've never researched light up Skechers.
Green. Oh wait, they're just like for kids. Shit. Why do kids get all the good stuff? God damn it. Okay, no, my hard I have to go is when my husband walks into the into the room and then starts making passive aggressive noises like
that's in the husband handbook.
And then I have to close the computer and be like, okay, yes, it's time for sleep.
Okay,
that's
I have to answer a chat. Ryan English asked. He said he picked up on the fact that I mentioned MUDs, and that I used to play MUDs, and I have a love-hate relationship with a particular MUD that I've been playing on and off for. I mean it's if it's not 20 years, it's 19 now. And yes, and if you watch me on Twitch, I think there will become a time very soon where I will be actually playing a MUD live on Twitch for all of you to be supremely bored by that. My Twitch streams are the most because all I do is play games from the 90s. But and Ryan English says he lied and said no one is asking about your shoes, but that's not true. There was at least one request for shoe talk in the chat, so I'm fully insured and covered on that. Let's see. Buff G Bob says, I thought men are normally just aggressive. But yeah, so I mean, what do you want to talk about? Like I can talk about whatever, because I don't know enough about people and I always want to learn more. So
Well, you know, like most authors, I can talk at length about my story, but then I would probably give a lot of spoilers. Um, geez, now I don't really have anything to talk about. I'm on the spot.
Well, no, that and that's fine. We can wrap things up because we've talked about everything we talked about talking about, right? We talked about the lawsuit. We talked about what you're doing now. So what I think is a good idea. Let's do one more time. Plug and shill the heck out of your book. I will put it, of course, in the description, but sell it one more time. The elevator speech is it's Romeo and Juliet in space, or it's heavy metal in space.
No, oh yeah.
Oh, meets War and Peace. Meets War and Peace.
Meets War and Peace in space. There you go. It depends on what I want to emphasize. Like if it's a woman, I'm not going to necessarily say heavy metal meets War and Peace in space. It's gonna be more Romeo and Juliet. If it's a guy, it's like heavy metal. You know, and there's some parts of the comic I really can't show on stream, but there you go.
Oh, so it's a racing comic.
I think it's. Oh yeah. You know, maybe if they'd actually looked in the freaking comic, they could have found something to legitimately kick me out for. But
that's not true, Canada. Don't look at the comic unless you bought it.
Sorry?
I was telling Canada not to look inside the comic unless they bought it, because I don't want them to kick you off of anything.
No, there's nothing like it's all within the grounds of what you would find acceptable in a convention. Although I might have to ask if people were above 18 before I let them actually leaf through the comic.
I see what you did there. Leaf is a Canadian joke. Good job.
Yeah. Okay, so it's called Xenospora. And you can get it at www.feedthebadger.com. Just scroll down. Once you get to the splash page, just scroll down and you'll see it. And once again, it's heavy metal. I presume your audience is mostly male, so I'll go with heavy metal. Heavy metal meets War and Peace in space.
Well, I'm a little bit offended. There's like a 4% female viewership.
Well, it's YouTube, right? Almost everybody on YouTube is a man, even the women. Is it transphobic?
I don't know. But yeah, no. Unless I'm doing videos about Poppy, then I get quite a bit more female viewership, and that's real. Like that actually happens. It's kind of funny when I get to update people on the Poppy versus Mars Argo lawsuit. My female viewership goes like to 35%. It's great.
Awesome.
But generally,
yeah, I don't think we get that much ever.
Well,
oh man. Okay, well, thank you for having me on.
No,
sorry.
I said let's wrap it up, and then I was saying thank you so much for coming on. This is great because, like, and this is not meant in any sort of way other than I have heard of Honey Badger Radio, but other than that, I haven't heard of you specifically. I wasn't really aware of any of the drama. I wasn't aware of the lawsuit until someone started messaging me on Twitter about it. And so I'm really glad you came on and talked about it. And definitely keep me posted as the appeal develops, because I'd love to know what happens and what goes on with that. Because it sounds like again from my perspective that you guys have been at least on some issues mistreated under Canadian law, and so it'd be interesting to see if that gets corrected.
Yeah, it would be definitely interesting to see if that gets corrected. This could be just sort of an isolated problem to this particular court system, although the fact that they're hiding the judgment makes me really, really perturbed about it. Like it feels bizarre. In fact, there was other things that happened during the court case that just felt really weird, but if we're wrapping it up, I won't get into it. So yeah, I do hope that this is corrected. So I don't want to have a tarnished view of my country. I want to believe that my country is capable of being better than this and actually standing up for the human rights of all people, not just people who are convenient to a narrative. So I can see that people are starting up with the same things over and over again. She hired a disbarred lawyer and all of that scamming stuff. So it feels like I'm on like a hamster wheel. Just keeps going, like new person comes in, same copied and pasted stuff, same copied and pasted allegations.
So Clay's he's my moderator on probation. He says, make Clay a hashtag full mod and obviously everyone drink. We'll think about it, Clay. Let's see what your super chats can do. But what? No, get into it if she wants to and you want to. What, Rajveer, what are you talking about?
Get into it? Oh, you mean the bizarreness of that happened?
Yeah, I mean, I guess. Someone yelled in all caps, what was weird?
Yeah, what was weird? Okay, well, I'll get into that. But first can I say something about somebody in the chat?
You can say whatever you want.
There's this individual named Dax Desi who says that I'm nuts, and that the individual has been over it already been over it years ago. So what is it that I did that was nuts specifically? Dax? I mean, I'll be happy to read it, whatever you say.
Uh-oh. Except for the N-word. You will not read that on stream.
No, I won't read out anything that will cause.
That's a joke. I'm just joking. I'm just joking. Don't worry.
I won't cause you any distress. I don't want to cause your stream to disappear or anything.
No, don't even worry about it.
If there's something. Okay, what was weird that happened? During we go through a pre-trial conference to try to figure out if there's a way to settle. And we had been through the pre-trial conference, and I had requested the following from the defendants. What I requested was that they apologize and take responsibility, that they say that what they had done was wrong. And I requested of the Mary Sue that they pay half of the legal costs up to that point, which had been about $10,000. So $5,000. And that's it. And then we got into the actual lawsuit. And during the first days of testimony, after I had given after the first day of testimony, there was a judge, one of the Supreme Court justices of Alberta, who came to our court to try to mediate. So this was not the usual, you have the pretrial conference where you're supposed to mediate. If it doesn't work, you just go ahead with the trial. It was like the court itself wanted me to settle. It was like these judges themselves wanted me to settle, to not go forward with the court case. And when I went to do this mediation with the Supreme Court justice, which was there's no real precedent behind this. You do your pretrial conference, you don't settle, you go to trial, the end. So they're not supposed to be like, okay, let's try to pull them back into mediation at this point. And I didn't really want to mediate, but I was sort of forced to, because you don't want to appear unreasonable. And the Supreme Court judge felt like he was pressuring me to actually settle rather than go forward. And by pressure, I mean, he was like saying like, oh, well, you're stubborn and stuff like that. So actual judgment on my motives, judgment on my character for pursuing the lawsuit, it seemed like it was really out of bounds, actually, and weird. And I realized after getting this judgment and the fact that they aren't making it public, I get the feeling that the court itself was going to make this judgment, but didn't want to, because they knew how bad it was. So their first trying saving throw was trying to get me to settle. And this is just my suspicion. It's just like you go somewhere and you feel like something's off. So I don't know if you can I don't know if there's any commentary to make on that, but that's what I was getting at when I said that.
Well, the only commentary I can make is that in the U.S., it's actually like it's kind of the opposite. It's very common for judges in civil litigation to order both parties to some sort of mediation. In fact, like when we're filing civil suits in Minnesota, we have to talk about in our, like if I'm filing a civil suit, I file something called a civil cover sheet, which kind of tells the court what some basic facts about the suit without them having to read the complaint, right? This is about a breach of contract. We think it's going to take this many months for discovery. We have a proposed trial start date of this. One of the questions is, which alternative dispute resolution medium do you think is the best to use? And we pick like mediation, arbitration, stuff like that. So we actually like it's interesting to me that in Canada, that's not how it goes, just because in the US and specifically in Minnesota, alternative dispute resolution is pushed heavily by the courts, and they will actually oftentimes order civil litigants to try and resolve things outside of the court first. And like with the full effect of a court order, no, you at least go to this mediation and you try to put forth an effort. And if you guys ultimately come up with nothing, you can't reach agreement, sure, you come back and go to court, but they'll actually order it in our cases. So I'm not making any commentary on the Canadian procedure. It's just, it was just an interesting thing to me, because here that's the norm as opposed to there where it's apparently not. So.
Well, no, we were ordered to like do a pretrial conference. This Supreme Court judge taking an interest in the case was just completely like off the wall. Like it wasn't something that was part of the procedure.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm saying.
I see.
Like this was not a planned mediation. We'd already had our planned mediation in which they basically told me to go fuck myself. We're not apologizing. And so they took it to the trial, and then they tried again to mediate. And what I'm saying is that it wasn't just the defendants who seemed to want to settle at that point. It was the court. Like it was this guy, this Supreme Court justice, who seemed to want to settle this. And it was just bizarre why he would take an interest in it, for one,
right,
and why he would push so hard for a settlement in the other, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So there's weird stuff in your case, and that's what you said. And now you've elaborated on it. But yeah, it is very weird that would happen.
Yeah, it is. Okay, well, I'm gonna take off because I know people wanted to see. No, there's no grumbling. Hey, Jonathan, what are you up to? Maybe I shouldn't call him out on your stream. Oh man, but, I don't think you can hear me through the war. No, I don't. It's been great. I thank you so much for letting me on, and if you ever want to bring Karen on for her perspective on this, and she's probably much better at telling the story than I am. I'm actually pretty tired. It's well past my bedtime at this point. So I'm just rambling.
Well, we can wrap it up. I want to say thank you so much for coming on and engaging. Certainly there were some challenging questions and stuff at the chat, and thank you for talking through some of that. Absolutely. My whole platform is about people speaking freely and about people asking questions that they want to ask, and I don't like to censor people or stop them in any way. So I think you handled that very well. I was very excited to learn your story. I think personally you should get fired up more because it's very engaging. You definitely have things to be passionate about, and I think you can certainly capitalize on that passion. And if I can just personally recommend, if you can get on more of the ComicsGate live streams and tell your story, do it. Sell. You've got I did see part of your video. You've got an attic full of comics. Go sell them, because there are people who want to buy them, and there's no shame in that. There's no shame in that.
Yeah, like I said on Ethan's stream, I don't necessarily want pity points, but maybe if I say, I'm just the kind of person that seems to get into these situations where I'm speaking truth to power, and they don't like it, and they slam me down, and what do you got to do? You got to get back up and you got to fight back. And if you want to see the story of that somebody like that would write, then feedthebadger.com and take a look. It's Xenospora. And people have actually asked me what the characters are like. What are the main characters? Do you want me to talk a bit about that, or?
It's up to you. You said you were very tired, so I don't want to keep you.
Yeah, I know, but I'm also like, your chat is telling me to do stuff, and I'm used to being bossed around by a chat.
Well, then tell.
And my
tell
husband still hasn't come in. Like, he hasn't rescued me yet. So
tell me a little bit about the characters then. That's absolutely.
Okay, all right. So this is some of the panels. The two main characters, again, this is Romeo and Juliet meets War and Peace in Space. The two main characters are Ann Koa, who is a former weapons scientist, and she has some pretty dark stuff in her past. And the other main character's name is Blunt Trauma, and I know everybody's like, oh my god, the names are actually direct translations of words, and I wanted to capture some of that awkwardness with a direct translation, but regardless. So, and he is the scion of a very powerful family on his planet. And again, the backdrop that this takes place is it's far future, many millennia in the future. The Earth has sent out multiple waves of colonization. Each wave comes from its own context, so its own technology, its own philosophy, its own reason for leaving. And at this point in time, those waves have colonized their planets that they were intended to. They've raised themselves up to the point where they themselves have become starfaring, and they've started to meet up with each other again. And of course, because it's humans, and humans of all kinds of different philosophies and stripes, they are, of course, killing each other.
Well, that's what we do best.
Yeah, engaging in war and genocide, and in the best cases, hostile standoffs where nobody wants to talk to anyone. And so the story is really about, well, overall, it's about coming back together again as human beings and learning to love each other again. And then in specific, it follows the story of these two people who meet at a point in their life where they don't actually know each other's histories. And they actually develop a relationship in this sort of bubble of time. And then after that, they realize who it was that they met. And then they have to go through the decisions that each of them make in their past. And they have to make the decision, how much do I forgive? How much can I forgive if I want to continue to have this relationship with this person? So that's the basis of the story. And again, if that sounds like something you'd like to read, www.feedthebadger.com. I can get really deep into it, but like I said, I'm tired. And if my husband doesn't save me, I'm going to have to go save him from whatever game he's playing. I don't know if that's considered saving.
I think I should probably get going too, but no, that's great. And like I said, I'll put the link down in the description, and tweet it out with the replay of the video. Absolutely. And yeah, let me just say again, when if you get some interesting updates on the appeal, certainly shoot me a message on Twitter so we can talk about it and see, because I mean I'm happy to have you guys on, you and your co-hosts, sure, or whatever, and we can talk about that. And again, like I this is weird, I'm not armchair psychologizing this, but I kind of am. But just from my professional experience, you know, when you get battered down by this stuff, but don't let that stop your creativity, right? Like, don't let that stop you from telling stories to people if that's what you want to do. Don't let that stop you from producing things you want to produce, and don't feel shame in that, because you know, I think everybody out there's got a story to tell, and the saddest part of our society is that some people don't have the ability, like the actual communicative ability to tell it. But I think if everybody could tell stories, that, you know, everybody's got an amazing one. So certainly,
yeah, that's true.
Certainly push on with that. But thank you again for coming on stream, and you know, I wish you the best in your endeavors.
Nice. This has been so nice. I don't want to leave it. I don't want to leave this stream. I like this stream. This
Well,
is the best stream. Can I just like move into this stream and make it my home?
I don't know about that. This is my house. This is my house. But you can certainly come back sometime and we can talk more and about other things. If there's interesting Canadian law stuff, you know, we can talk about it. We can, if you ever want me to talk to Harry, you know, that might be interesting, although he might get some
yeah,
flack.
definitely.
But yeah, so we can definitely do this again sometime. And
yeah. And somebody says you might get some frustration points instead of pity points because of the nature of the context of my comic book. Well, yeah, I'll take it. Like, if you want to piss off a feminist, I guarantee there are a few watching Feed the Badger and looking at that number and grinding their teeth every time it goes up. So, you know, that's a selling point too.
And we want feminists to grind their teeth as much as possible so they have none left with which to bite.
Awesome. Yeah. Should end it there.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to close down the stream, and thank you so much for watching. And of course, stay tuned. Again, my content is going to ramp up in the very near future, and keep tuned for Rekieta Law School. If that's something that interests you, if you want to learn about how American law works, and more like about how an American law class from a law school would go, I'll be heavily modeling my law school off of the law classes I took, but with modified for updated content, of course, because a lot of years have passed. But it'll be graduate level, and there will be a lot to learn. So thank you so much, and I am ending the stream now.